evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 159th take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studios of Euless, Texas. I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, an amazing show, and I am so excited to have you all with us. I'm so excited to have our guests on, but before we get to formal introductions of the guests of honor, we do, of course, have to thank the people that make this show possible, and that, of course, is our sponsors, and tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Last month, Drew Estate announced the unveiling of the new wooden boxes for the Underground brand beginning last month. The new box design looks almost identical to the award-winning current design, and the boxes continue to contain 25 cigars. The major difference and improvement lies in the shelf-friendly, more compact format, which enables premium cigar retailers to stock more boxes and cigars inside their humidors, and you folks at home. So if you're a fan of the Underground Maduro, Underground Shade, or Underground Sun-Grown, grab up and stock up today on your favorite Underground cigars from Drew Estate and get many more into your personal humidors. Tonight's show is also sponsored by Oveja Negra Brands, 4 unique companies who share a passion to provide innovative cigars for the next generation of cigar enthusiasts. Black Label Trading Company, Blackwork Studio, Dissonant, and Emilio are combining premium tobacco with an artisanal touch. Oveja Negra, where art and tobacco collide. Join the flock and visit ovejanegracigars.com to learn more. And welcome, folks. It's our 159th take. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome the guest this evening, which is, of course, sponsored by United Cigars. Smoke one today and start living united. The one and only Mr. Pete Johnson, Tatuaje Cigars. Pete, how we doing tonight?
Good, Bear. How you been?
Oh, I have been absolutely sensational. It has been a crazy week. It's been a crazy month, because now I'm in a t-shirt in my studio, which everyone knows is in my garage at this point. But about 3 weeks ago, I couldn't actually even do a show from the studio because, it was
too cold.
Yeah, it was literally -6 degrees outside. So, welcome to Texas. That's just the way it is. And we were talking about crazy weather you
Texas. Yeah, Texas blew all the cold over to Miami again. Well, we had a little chill on February. Was it 2nd when we did our 14-hour thing? That was chilly that day for some reason, but this is just windy. We have a lot of crazy wind, so it brought down the temperature. That's why I'm wearing a long sleeve. So
yeah, things get a little chilly. I mean, I've got as you saw, a little whiskey keeping me company, but I got my flannel ready to go if necessary. But
yeah. And there's the planes I was talking about. I don't know if you can hear it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I think the weather shifted and shifted the planes closer to the house. So there was a plane, I guess, last night that I slept through that my wife said she thought it was going to hit the house.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we live, because as you know, I live right by Michael's Tobacco Euless, which is right by the airport. And
yeah,
everyone always asks I bet it's just the planes are just annoying. I'm like, I've certainly hear them on occasion, but can honestly say it's going to happen tonight now that I'm about to say it, but I've never been woken up by one. Never once really buzzed my house or anything like that. It's interesting.
No, I mean, we're kind of, I mean, you can't not be in a flight pattern in Miami. There's very few pockets in the city of Miami that are just oh yeah, we won't even hear any planes, but everywhere else, being on a plane so much in the past and seeing the flight pattern that comes through Miami, you're no, yeah, you're going to be able to hear it everywhere. But what's crazy is knowing the flight pattern that kind of comes over our house. I'm actually surprised I can actually hear the planes. That's how far up, because when I would look down out of the plane, I'm oh, there's the house, but they're really far away. It's not like it's super close. So just big old loud engines.
Yeah. What I was going to say about your place there in Miami, I've been on enough of these, either seen enough of your interviews or participated enough or been in a couple of herfs with you too. I feel like, I know this is sounding presumptuous, but at some point I would love to have the opportunity to actually visit your home, because every time you sit someplace differently and every view is just spectacular.
Yeah. You like my teak gateway.
I was gonna say it almost. I know it's not in that similar style, but for some reason when I first saw it, it kind of had that old West Saloon vibe thing that I feel like I
Yeah.
could just push through and just what entrance and let the
Well,
family know that I'm
when
home.
we got the house, when we bought the house, the guy who actually built the house, not the actual architect, but the owner, was a woodworker. And when you see the woodwork in this house, you'd be like, oh, okay, I get it. He
Makes
builds
sense.
like high-end cabinetry for like, showrooms and like really nice showrooms. And they left us two original antique rocking chairs that the father of the family built by hand, and they used to build in Cuba before they moved to the United States. And
Wow.
they're just gorgeous. Yeah. She had like the owner, the wife had like 8 of them on her patio, and she left us 2 because she actually saw Pepin sit in one, and she goes, I want to leave you a couple because I know he enjoyed them.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah, it was nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, my wife and I are considering moving, and no way in hell that we'd ever be able to afford this house that I sent her about. But I thought it was interesting. Like we were past it, and my son, of course, he's 5 years old, was like, I want to move in there because he's starting to recognize we're looking at homes, and so he's starting to recognize there's a for sale sign outside, and he's like gets all excited. And I was like, okay. Like we passed this house, and I was like, okay. So I looked it up. 2.5, an easy 2.5 million for the home.
Oh, yeah.
No big deal. But I was reading the description of it. The the doors, apparently, I shit you not, are not replicas, originals from the Hungarian embassy.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a
Yeah.
100-year-old stained glass window, which I thought was pretty cool. But the Hungarian
That's
embassy,
actually really cool. But 2.5,
yeah, no
a
big
lot
deal.
of upkeep on that house.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, what's a $2.5 million house size in Texas?
It was a little over 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's big. That's
Yeah,
big.
it was pretty massive. Yeah, you can see why it caught my son's attention, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think why people sell big houses eventually? Because of the upkeep.
Oh
And
gosh.
they figured, I'm going to let this old big house be upkept by someone else now.
I can see why
Because
people
after a
downsize.
certain period of time, after a certain period of time, big houses they start falling apart, and you have to have like a work crew come in and completely renovate the place. That's why I would never go that big. It just seems outrageous. I know a guy in the cigar business actually that was in I want to say 18,000 square foot house, and him and his wife downsized to 11,000 square feet.
Oh my goodness. That's as big as as big as my lot. And I have a pretty substantial sized lot for, being in the city. And I mean, my, house is, like 1,200 square feet, but like we have like a 10,000 square foot lot, so it's funny. Gosh.
Again, it goes back to that whole thing. It was like, he's probably smart because the house was built like probably in the 90s or maybe in the early 2000s. And he's like, well, I don't want to have to fix that. I don't want to have to fix that. Let's sell it.
There you go. Exactly.
Someone else will buy it. And by this time, he's owned it for X amount of years, and real estate properties, went up like crazy. And even though it's weird in Miami, they don't really go crazy up. They kind of just, bounce a little bit. But when they finally go up, it's usually about 15 to 20 years later, as opposed to California, everything goes up as soon as you buy. Amazingly enough.
Exactly. One of those crazy. The market's crazy right now too. The COVID has done a number on the market. It's just insane.
It's nuts.
So
we tried to get another warehouse down here in Miami. It was impossible to find something.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
I know the audience is just like riveted by my home shopping experience.
Oh, I'm sure they're
So
like thrilled to hear about this. Let's see what the chat room says.
they're still saying hi to each other because you can tell we're having some riveting talk here. But let's shift to some more riveting talk. Let's go through the basics here, Pete. You lit up something pretty unique, and why don't you share with what you're smoking tonight?
I'm actually smoking a 7x58 Bellicoso. It's people think of 7x58, it's going to be huge, but a Bellicoso version, taper is really nice, and it's actually super comfortable to smoke. So by the time you get down to the taper, and I usually hit it with, like, I have a cutter that has a back on it, so when I cut, I usually hit 3 or 4 times depending on the head. If it's a normal head, it's 1 time, right? A Fuma head, I might do 2, because the Fuma goes up a little bit. But on a Bellicoso, it's 3, maybe on a Torpedo, it's 4. So I'm guessing this is probably about a 50 ring gauge in my mouth compared to the 58 that's
Right.
actually, at the foot. But it's gonna be called Kohonu 2021, made in Nicaragua. Because it's been a while since I did a Kohonu, or since we've done a Kohonu, and to alleviate a little bit of the back order issue that we have on our Grand Kohonu that we make in Miami. Casey, Dan, and I were talking. Actually, my brother brought it up to me, and then Casey and Dan and I were kind of mashing it around and trying to figure out a good alternative. And of course, 6x58 came up because I did that similar size for the Double D years ago. And then I had a couple conversations with some retailers, and I said, would you go bigger? And they're like, yeah, go to the 7. Because I asked the factory first off, I said, what size can the mold handle? And they're like 7x58. I'm like, give me some samples. And I had already made the samples of the 6x58, but the 7x58 it's spectacular. I'm loving it. I mean, this is one of those cigars that I could actually get used to smoking, but it's not my style.
Yeah, when you said that, when we were talking just in the green room before the show, I was like, wow, because I was in your backup cigar is kind of usually the wheelhouse that I'm used to seeing you smoke in.
Yeah, nice little Robusto backup.
But no, I'm excited about that size. I think that'll completely something a little bit new, but with your typical spin on it, I like it. So
yeah, the Kohonu blend carries well in this size, and amazingly enough, I've had 2 Bellicoso style cigars in the Kohonu lineup before. So the 06 and the 09 are both Bellicoso hits. They're just completely off the chain when it comes to ring gauges. One's a standard 52 and the other one's a 48, 49. So you're in a long, kind of like a pencil Bellicoso. So it's a little bit of a different style. For me to come out with this is a jump, but I think it will cater to the guys that are looking for the Grand Kohonus that can't find them in stores right now. And I just didn't want to make a Grand Kohonu out of Nicaragua and send it up here and say it was made in Miami, obviously.
Right. No, I think that's a nice little spin off of it too. We're going to get into factories here in a little bit, but and there's an observation that I made, and we'll kind of dive into a little bit later, but just the level of detail that you emphasize on a lot of different things. Like I said, we'll get into a little more of it later, but I was really being observant of that, the way you are about those things. And I think I find that it truly does translate to the product and to the experience, where I think sometimes it's just, nuanced a little bit in other cases, but not to be too cryptic or anything, but I'm smoking a Cowboy Guan.
Yeah.
New sizes with the nice new band. Now I actually learned that this is only for the new Vitolas. You're still going to keep the traditional band on the traditional Vitolas.
The original 4 Vitolas, and well, actually technically 5 sometimes, because we would make those little WCDs that actually had bands. Those are going to stick with the old school band. This was kind of more of a 2 sizes to celebrate the 15th anniversary of Cabai One, and to give the brand a flashy new look, but everybody around me and the guys, even the band makers, were like, please don't change the regular Cabai One band. We love the simplicity of it. So, I mean, the same people that made this band that you're smoking make the regular ones, and they were like, yeah, we love the simplicity of that Cabai One band. Like, please don't change it. I'm like, no, I'm just going to use it for these 2 cigars, and maybe any new cigars coming that we throw into the line under Cabai One. But the first 4 are just, I suppose, it's always that question. Like, I suppose that if we decided to put the new band on the original 4 sizes and kind of make all the cigars look uniform and the packaging uniform, whether or not maybe it would capture some new attention to the line. But then there's the old school guys that just love the way it is and don't change it. I'm the same way. Like, I remember watching a very famous brand in our industry, literally within the first 2 years, change the bands 3 times and change the packaging like 4 times. So it was it was like really tough to watch. And I think they were just grasping at straws, but the brand was already solid. You didn't need to dress it up. Like, in its simplest form, its original form, the band, I won't tell you the brand. The band was a simple brown band. The cigars were box pressed. They had tissue paper in the box, and the packaging was relatively simple. And then the next version of it, the cigars came in cello, and the bands were glossy. And then the next version of the bands were bigger. They were still glossy, and now the cigars were round. And then they started putting cellophane on the round one. So it's like, it was so confusing as a consumer.
Oh, I bet.
In a very short period of time. So the consumer was like, what happened to the ones that we had last year? I'm like,
or last
week. The same cigar.
Right. There's going to be people in the chat that are just like furiously Googling things now. They're like, brown label changes, like brand changes.
I don't know if I could probably say who it is because it's changed hands. Actually, I'll say who it is. This brand has changed hands. And if you look at the evolution of this brand, it's so far off the chain of how many packaging changes, how many box changes, like shapes of boxes, styles of boxes, counts, or maybe the count was always 20, but maybe instead of doing 2 flat rows of 10, they did 4 rows of 5, or they had 3 rows and one had a block on the bottom. It was Camacho.
That's what I was thinking in the back of my head.
And before that, before they went through the change in, what year was it? About 2000, maybe around 2000. Before they went through the change in around 2000, the year 2000, the packaging before that in the mid 90s was like kind of a dress box. But they also had a little bit of a sweet cap to the cigar too. But the cigars were box pressed back then too.
See, I never tried the box press version of that. That would have been really cool.
Oh, I think I probably still have like 1 or 2 sticks left in a box.
Oh wow!
I have to go digging through my stash to find them. But it was one of those cigars for me that kind of changed the show, like everything about it. Christian sent me a sampler box. We had a conversation in Los Angeles. This is like late 90s at the Grand Havana Room, and he sent me a sampler box. I think it might have been like 99, maybe early 2000. And I was walking my dogs, and I called and left them a voicemail. I'm like, I don't know what you put in these things, but these are some of the best cigars I've smoked in a long time. It was a game changer for me. And I got everybody at the Grand Event Room hooked on this cigar. Like, just, they were like, what the hell is this? Where's it from? I go, it's from Honduras. It's totally changing the game. And then slowly things started changing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not big on change. If you notice how I haven't really changed much of my packaging.
Well, that was actually going to be my point, was like, okay, so back in the day when I, just barely knew your name and a little bit about your background and everything, I always found it, and I'm going to completely just own it right now. It was lost on me how, a guy with a musical background, the tattoos and everything, young, hip, really, literally the rock star of the cigar industry, would have such simple packaging. And then, as I got to know your story and got to know you, I was like, oh, he's paying homage. Like, this is, and I think that's why, I think even like the little subtle changes to the Cab Iguan that started this whole conversation, like you're still honoring the past and everything. So I like, yeah, I'll hop in that camp. I hope it never changes. Just because I like tradition.
I'm a huge fan of tradition, and cigars, I think at the front, they've always been about simplicity. The cigar has to shine before the band does. And you can put an amazingly pretty band on a cigar, a great cigar, and it'll be great. But we've seen in the past so many great looking products that aren't that great tasting or great in general.
Now,
I mean, think about like, I'll go into sneakers for a second, because we got the oldest one in the house, a pair of Jordans, and they're still, it's the Jordan that they came up with in the 80s or whatever it is, It's the same shoe. It just might be a better leather. Maybe the technology has changed a little bit, but honestly, it's the old technology still, right?
Yeah, it's still a shoe. Yeah, at the heart of it.
But then there's these shoes that come out that try to, like, oh, we're the hot new shoe. Like, let's throw the Ball family in here for a second. LeVar Ball and their brand, and they come out with these crazy shoes that are made in wherever, and they look ridiculous, but they're just pieces of shit at the end of the day. So
exactly,
I don't know. It's enough about that.
Well, there's kind of like segues into this. I wanted to get a little salty tonight on a couple of subjects, Pete.
I like salt.
So
I'm a good salt guy.
So, and this is an older subject. This story is over 18 months old, but it kind of ties into this. So I'm going to tie it together to you in a second. But the open-ended question I'm going to pose to you is, why is everything a debate? Why is it either or? And I'm going to tee it up in two different ways. Like, they're both relevant to you. So I was having this discussion. You and I were texting about one of the new projects, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. And my comment to you is, I was like, I love your work with Sumatra. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was having a conversation with somebody and about it. And I was, kind of just talking about, I was like, oh, I'm really excited about this project because I love when Pete works with Sumatra. And like, immediately this person goes into the defense and says, no, absolutely not. His broadleaf is way better. It's blah, blah, blah. I mean, just goes off like on a 3-minute, this 3-minute tirade. And I was like, I didn't say I didn't like broadleaf stuff from him.
Yeah.
Why can't we like both? Like, why is everything such heated debate?
Yeah.
Your thoughts? Why does everything have to be a debate?
I don't know. I mean, shit, I love, I don't do it a lot, but I still love stirring the pot here and there. Like, I wanted to have a debate the other night when I posted that whole thing about, is it really an Amazon original movie if they didn't really make it? They just bought it and decided they wanted to be the ones that distributed it, right? And I guess it's an Amazon exclusive. So that, to me, that's a good debate. Like, how do you feel about it? And someone jumped on and said, who the truck cares, you know? And I'm like, yeah, it's a stupid question, I know, but I'm curious to have, you know, I think it was Ben Lee that actually was like, yes, it's absolutely an Amazon original. I go, and then Coop jumped on and says, no, it's made by Paramount. So I don't know. I don't know why people like to debate so much, but I think it's healthy.
Yes.
As long as it doesn't get heated. You know, there's a difference between a good debate and a fight.
Right.
And
passion is one thing, right? It's vitriol, which is like the enemy of debate.
Yeah. So I think with cigars is like people just have their opinion on what they like better. And if you say Sumatra and the next guy says broadleaf, it might get heated.
No, absolutely. I mean, apparently, I mean, I've called down the thunder on a number of things. One of which I've recanted the story before when Twitter was like a new thing, and I got on Twitter and I used it for talking about cigars and stuff. And I remember this was about the time where New York had just outlawed soda, you know, among obviously, you know, tobacco consumption has been a problem in there. And then soda was the next thing that they came up with. But then all of a sudden the story came out about how they were considering legalizing cannabis, right? And you know, this was years ago, and obviously I was, you know, immature in my youth too, but I just put it out there, and I fully admit this now at the age of 37, I was wrong to use this word, but I was like, okay, so my tweet was, so let me get this straight: tobacco, soda, bad; narcotics, good. And the shit that I caught was just unbelievable. And there was not one pro soda or anti soda, not one pro tobacco or anti tobacco person that just lit me up over Twitter. It was all about, like, you know, cannabis isn't a narcotic, you know, it's safer than this. I mean, just like everything. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah. That's always the tough part when you have I mean, listen, I'm a C plus student, maybe a C minus student. I know streets more than I know books. And if I don't know something full out, I just don't post it. As much as we have at our fingertips with knowledge and Googling things, there's some things you just don't want to jump into because there's always someone that you know that's going to answer it in the wrong way, and it's going to start a shitstorm. So I just try to avoid stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it still pales in comparison to the thunder I called down when I said that the, you know, Christmas Vacation was crap, you know.
Oh, well, that's a good debate. That's a healthy, fun debate, because Christmas Vacation is one of the best movies ever.
And that's why we'll just agree to disagree on that one, Pete. So I've had the discussion enough times, but man, but I think you know,
did you understand? I think I told you why Christmas Vacation to me holds a soft spot. Did I ever tell you that story?
If you did, it's escaping me.
I moved to Los Angeles the same year that it came out.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I saw Christmas Vacation by myself at Mann's Chinese Theater.
That's right. Yes.
It was one of those movies that just brought me to a happy place during a time where I felt so alone, because I was, you know, literally to me, I was alone in Los Angeles and I was away from family, and you know, I had a job, but I wasn't making a lot of money, and movies were like my out. You know, I saw all the great movies for me, like, dude, Die Hard. I saw at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. I mean, like, these theaters don't even exist anymore. So like Hollywood Boulevard during those days, because I lived on Hollywood Boulevard, about, I don't know, 3 or 4 blocks from Mann's Chinese Theater. And so every time a new movie would come out, it was always at one of these big old theaters. And that was my way of escaping. So fun times.
Yeah, you know, after the year that we've had, you know, we're going to be talking to our kids or grandkids about movie theaters, and they're going to be talking about, like, what are you talking about? People used to go to some place and watch a film. I can just stream it on my phone.
Yeah, well, don't tell those people that still invest in AMC.
Exactly. No, I'm looking. That's actually one of the things I'm looking forward to most about like return to normalcy. Is I want to go see a movie in an actual theater.
Come to Florida.
Oh yeah. Well, Texas is
Florida's
about to
pretty
open up
much open.
too. Yeah, Texas is about to open back up again too. But
I heard Texas was only open to drive all the people from California back to California.
That could be an interesting theory. Yeah, no, actually later this week they're going back to the orders going up to 100% capacity, and then the mask orders being lifted too. So it's been an interesting. Speaking of debate, it's been an interesting point of debate the last few days.
I'll throw in my 2 cents about the debate of masks. The reality is like, if you're walking down the street exercising with your family members and no one's around, I mean, there were people getting tickets for that at one point if you didn't have a mask on. That's just plain silliness. But if you're in a public place, put a mask on. I mean, it's like, I don't understand. For me, I don't understand the debate of like, why can't we know how to be adults, we know how to live. We know that when we're walking into a busy restaurant or a busy store, that, hey, have a mask on just to protect each other. Why not? To take the mandate 100% away, I don't know. I think I don't know. That's a long, touchy subject for a lot of people, I'm sure. But
oh yeah,
listen, I'm not going to tell anybody like, oh, you have to wear a mask. Like, but I actually appreciate that restaurant workers have to wear masks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about how many less times my food's been spit in. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's an absolutely fair point. I think that, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the restaurant quality in terms of sanitation certainly has gone up, right? Even with just some of the basics that they've instituted, like, you know, and that's taken it. Yeah, I was gonna say, taking like all the joking aside about people spitting in their food and stuff like that. I mean, that's not, I mean, we're not talking about like, intentional that, I mean, there's it's just breathing and, people coughing into their shoulder and sneezing and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Next subject. That was horrible.
Well, but the internal debate. Now, this is a story that's 18 months old, but this was something that you took great exception to, but it sparked a huge debate nationwide, which was interesting because it was at the center of it was a huge pop star who you actually happen to know. Of course, that was Nick Jonas, who appeared on the cover of Cigar Aficionado, which I thought was pretty cool from where I stand, just because I was like, wow, that's, a younger generational member, being photographed on Cigar Aficionado, which, typically has been I mean, I don't think Marvin Shankin will get too mad at me. I think it's an older generational, their audience is a little older. So
they've had, they are, but they've had, younger, hip, actors on the cover. I think, you got the sports celebrities that have been on the cover. They were in their prime, some of them.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And you got Vince Vaughn,
right.
Now with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson on the cover. I mean, that
was a good interview.
These are people that still carry a lot of the younger generation with them. So it's actually helpful across the board. The Nick Jonas one was controversial because here it is, a young pop star from a boy band, and he's young. There's no way that he can really smoke cigars. And why would they put him on the cover? Well, they put him on the cover because he's a real smoker and he really enjoys it and he loves it. And plus, the kid's becoming a megastar. He's got new movies coming out left and right. He just produced a new album outside of the work he does with his brothers. I mean, the kid's no joke, and he loves sitting down, relaxing with cigars, and he nerds out on it too. So at the end of the day, we're all nerds for these things. And if I could tell you, I'm sure he smokes more than The Rock does, and The Rock is also on the cover. So
well, I think he even admitted to it. Yeah, I was gonna say Johnson even admitted to that he's not really terribly into it. I mean, he's had them, but yeah, he's not like a huge cigar smoker. Catherine Zeta-Jones was on the cover a few years ago too. She doesn't smoke at all.
I thought she smoked for some reason
In the
because of
interview, she
Michael.
said she didn't. I just remembered that, or very rarely one of those things.
Yeah, I thought for some reason she was a cigar smoker because of Michael Douglas, who was a big smoker at one time.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's healthy to have the mix up there, but that's where you got to remember. Actors like The Rock who are on the cover. There's the reason why Cigar Aficionado is really just called Cigar Aficionado. Like the big aficionado. It used to have a big. I don't know if you've seen the old covers.
Mm-hmm.
It was big Cigar Aficionado, and now it's just tiny in the corner
Aficionado. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the publication. I know it definitely catches its own. Speaking of debate, it catches its own debate and everything, which we'll be talking about Cigar Aficionado here a little bit more in a second. But you talked about nerding out. That kind of leads us into our major point for this evening. So tonight's major point is always brought to you by Baracoa Cigar Company. Baracoa is back, getting ready for the relaunch of the Voyage this spring. I personally can't wait for the cigar to come back. It's been over 3 years, but now with a revamped blend coming from one of the hottest factories in the industry. Danny Vasquez promises if you like the original blend, you're going to love the relaunch. So stay tuned for more details of how you can enjoy the new Voyage. And remember, never settle. Baracoa Cigar Company. So Pete, we're gonna go a little bit nerding out on some of these latest projects that you were cryptic, but not so cryptic about, posting them on social media and everything like that. Getting a lot of your fans and the consumers alike really excited about some of the stuff that you're working on your recent trip to Nicaragua. But before we get into that, here's an interesting question that I want to ask. You've spent years going to Nicaragua, and I know it's been far too long for you. Probably about a year since your last visit there. But outside of cigars and the cigar industry, so anything tobacco related, what's your favorite part of Nicaragua?
Wow. You know what? I don't really know. I mean, aside from the tobacco side and the fields and everything we do day to day down there, I think it would probably be the people. It's really the people that I work with down there, because I have key people in the factory that I work directly with, that I know I can work with them at peace while Jaime is busy doing other things. He knows he can trust me to work with them and everything will get taken care of. I think it's got to be the people. I still love the sights. I love the fact that Nicaragua's got the most active volcanoes out there, which is really cool. I will tell you, I do not like the drive from Managua to Esteli. It's horrible. So that's my least favorite part about Nicaragua. But
well, it varies.
I think
so
the
much.
people
it's
just
like
love to live.
3 hours to 7 hours, right? Like it just depends.
Well, it depends on what type of vehicle you're in, but it could be 2.5 to 7. Yeah. Yeah, I think the people are where it's at. They just have a different vibe on life. They're living. I mean, and they're hard workers, especially in the factories. So, but for me, it's been so focused on the tobacco side that I rarely venture outside of that box. So,
you mentioned the volcanoes, and it just occurred to me, and I forgive me if I'm slipping here, Pete, but I mean, have you ever worked with? I'm sure you certainly you have, and I'm just misremembering at the moment. Ometepe tobacco, have you ever dabbled in it? See,
nope.
I didn't think so.
No,
Too overpowering.
No, we just don't use it. We use tobaccos exclusively from the farms that the Garcias grow. There was a point in time in the early days, obviously, the Garcias didn't have this many farms, and we were relying on buying tobacco from good partners like ASP and Oliva Tobacco. We still buy tobaccos from both of those companies, mostly wrappers. But when it comes to fillers and binders, it all comes from the different regions that the Garcias grow in. So you're talking Jalapa, Esteli, obviously. There is a big farm that they have called La Esperanza, which is on the edge of Cundega, but it's actually not down in the valley, but it's actually right before you hit the valley. Beautiful farm, beautiful tobacco, like probably one of my favorite farms that they have. It's their newest one. They've had it for a couple of years now. And then their region that they kind of built up themselves called Namahi, which is kind of a cross between Jalapa and Esteli when it comes to tobacco. Namahin is really popular for when you think about the brand Flor de las Antillas, because a lot of the tobacco that came from Flor de las Antillas was from Namahin.
Yeah, so that explains that, like, that sweet spiciness. I mean, Jalapa has that nice sweet characteristic, and then Esteli obviously has that pop to it.
Yeah, like so Namahi right now though, I would say, trying to think of the amount of manzanas they have out there, but it's a lot. I would say about 80% of their production out there now is all shade grown for wrappers.
Interesting. Okay.
So when you get into that little valley that they have created over there, it's like a sea of cheesecloth or whatever, that cloth that's all you see. Like you get up to, there's a piece of the property where we get up to the top of, and you can actually see the whole span, and it's just massive. They still do some sun grown stuff out there on certain farms that they rely on for certain tobaccos, but they shifted a lot of the farms to what they call tapado, shade grown.
Awesome. That's really interesting. Yeah, I think what's any mainstream products that have come from there that you could name off the top of your head?
Well, I mean, some of the shade grown tobacco you're talking for wrappers, obviously, Fonseca for one of them, my Escaso stuff. You're talking about shade grown Corojo 99. So it's just a different leaf. As soon as you shade grown tobacco, it thins out the veins, it makes it smoother, keeps a lot of the oils in the wrapper, but the pliability on these wrappers, just stretches out really well.
So I'm going to jump.
Okay,
go ahead. No, please. I was going to say, I'm going to jump subjects for just 2 seconds. And because I wanted to ask you this at some point. So tonight, so the Fonseca project, I know you were a big fan of it. And I'm giving you full permission just to call me out as an idiot on here. Am I crazy? Obviously, taste is subjective, but am I crazy that the cedar wrap, the Consacos, is just that much different, in my opinion, better than the other Vitolas? But is it that much different? Am I nuts? Am I stupid? I'm giving you permission.
No, you know what it is? It's that connection to the cedar. There is something about cigars when you put them down in a cedar environment, and same thing with the My Father number 1 in the cedar. That's just like it has like this extra pop of character to it that doesn't come from the regular ones that don't hit as much cedar. They might hit a little bit in the box, but when it's directly connected to that wrapper just absorbs that profile, and it gives it like a cool texture, a nice little spice to it. I hate talking about how cedar can impart flavor, because that's something we try to steer away from as much as possible, especially talking about cigars in the industry. But there is something to say about a cedar wrap cigar that captures a little bit of that essence, those natural oils from the cedar that actually make the cigar shine. the blend's the same.
Right.
I mean, the blend's identical. I'll go back to the whole thing about box pressing and round cigars. You know, a round cigar in a cabinet and a box press version in a dress box are going to perform differently, and you're going to get different nuances out of both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I've had debates with, you know, people from high, you know, big magazines about this. Are like, yeah, it's gonna be a different cigar. Like, there is a difference. There's absolutely a difference, because the way it's bunched, you know, traditional box pressing, not so much, because traditional box pressing, every cigar is the same, and then it's put in the box and smushed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a round cigar that just happens to be smushed. But when you're factory pressing cigars, which a lot of people do, when you're box pressing in like factory molds to get that square character to the cigar, you actually have to produce that cigar differently, so it has the air pockets in it, so you have the room to press it. Because if you press that round cigar completely square, you won't get a draw out of it, or you'll get a really tough draw.
No, I totally agree. That's what I was like saying, you know, when the people want to have the debate with me on box press not tasting different, and like, well, you understand that they're changing the blend. There's tobacco that's removed to create airflow inside the box press, unless you're talking about, like you were saying, like the traditional box press where it's just a parejo that's been pressed in the box. You know, that's a different story. But yeah, but actually blending with the press and everything, and factory pressing, like you say, it's a completely different process, which obviously alters the cigar experience.
Yeah.
But you know, going into a different experience. So one of the projects you were working on, you and I were actually talking about this over text, was the LLE Capa Especial.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the cigar that actually sparked the discussion about the I can't believe I like Sumatra stuff over the broadleaf, which I never said, obviously. But so this is the redux of an original release that you did. But speaking of box press as well, 6 3/4 by 42.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's an allocation specifically going to an HC. So
yeah, which is all gone already.
Right. I saw that you posted about that. So, talk a little bit about, you know, the idea of like just this cigar, and then I want to talk about the discussion of like reduxing, which you've done quite a few redux projects over your time in the industry. But this cigar specifically, what made you come back to this particular project, and what what was it about that kind of drew you in?
I think you know, Dan and I had a long conversation about it. Actually, Casey was involved too, but it's just a size that we love. It doesn't get a lot of fanfare. We did a similar version of the size, well, not version of the cigar, but the similar version of the size with the Crystal Baller in Surrogates. And it was like the least performing size in the line, but people still hold like the old Sumatra Capa Especial NHC kind of on a pedestal. And I figured it was like the perfect opportunity to show that, you know, this is a cigar that shines, and people need to experience a smaller ring gauge to understand it. We call it a limited Lonsdale Extra. I guess it would be called a Cervante Larga normally. But I think it was just one of those things. We loved the size, and we wanted to come back out with it. And it was 9 years ago that we did it before. Actually, technically 10 years ago. It was released 9 years ago, but it's a long time for a cigar to be kind of out of commission. And that's why I like Reduxes. If they've been out of commission for a good period of time, I'll consider doing them. And that's why here it is 13 years later with the Frank coming back as a Redux. And actually all the boxes will be labeled as Reduxes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so all the monsters moving forward will be, you know, Frank Redux, Drac Redux. So they'll actually say Redux on the box so people know.
Really quick before we dive back into Reduxes, the LLE Kappa Special, is this what Dan refers to as the Mansdale size, or is that a different format?
No, that's the Mansdale.
It's the Mansdale? Okay.
Yeah, that's the Mansdale.
Nice.
It's a long Lonsdale.
No, and I even commented. I even said, I was like, man, that it didn't, the way that the angle that you took the photo at, I thought it was larger. I was like, I couldn't believe it was a 42, but obviously the box press kind of plays with you a little bit on that. But when I was asking you about Reduxes, you had an interesting take on it. I thought this would be worthy of sharing tonight. You mentioned that you like the idea of giving a new generation or the next generation of smoker a chance to try something that they didn't.
Was from the past.
Yeah, that was from the past like that.
I think it's important. I mean, first of all, to see some of these original cigars going for just absurd amounts of money, you kind of take pride in it in some way, but in another way you're kind of offended by it because that's not what they were meant for. They were meant to be smoked. But then you also have to give the guy credit for holding on to them for so long. But at the end of the day, I wanted to come back out with certain things to give people a try, to give people some way to try a cigar from the past that they had no way to get, or if they were able to get it, they would have to pay, $100 to get it. That's why the T110 is coming back. Marvin from Hawaii, from our fields in Hawaii, I'm doing a run for him with the T110, and then slowly we'll start digging into the portfolio and finding more things that we can redux. It all started when the FDA came in, and we were all questioning whether or not we could do new things, right?
Right.
And anything that was out before 2016, I was like, wow, I have a ton that was out before 2016. I can technically keep on doing those, but what cigar works? What cigar has been gone long enough that makes sense? And if you think about it, the Kappa Special ones that we did, the Mancero or Mansdale size for Dan originally, we made 70 boxes. That wasn't a lot. It was a very small production. And this was a way to give us, obviously our main concentration is regular production, but this is a way for us to have fun within the regular production.
No, absolutely. So there were a couple of limiteds that were being shouted out in the chat, and I had one. I never had the opportunity to try. In fact, it wasn't even released. It was just something that you had fun with. The Dark Lord Day cigar.
Oh yeah.
I
should go get one to smoke.
No,
everybody wonders if I'm playing with that right now. I'm not playing with Dark Lord Day, but I am playing with that particular cigar. The last time I was in Nicaragua, I was playing with the exact blend, the way it was put together, just with a twist. The original version was actually Habano, Ecuador, with like a Claro style wrapper, Claro color or shade wrapper. The newest version I tried was actually with the Corojo 99 shade grown.
Oh, interesting.
Just to see how much it would change. There are some reduxes that we like to play around with that are not actually reduxes. Like the Karloff was not a Boris Redux. It was actually a brand new cigar based on the original style of the Boris, but amped up. I will say that the Frank is based off of the original blend, but tobacco's changed so much that we're going to get as close as possible, but I'm also adding a covered foot to the cigar to make it different than the original cigar. And that way there's no confusion with consumers.
Oh, interesting. It's still the only monster that I haven't smoked, and it's the original format. So when you announced that, I mean, you kind of teased it. You've been teasing it for a couple years now that you were potentially going back around, and I got super excited, and the negative Nancy's all around like, well, it's gonna be a different cigar, and I'm like, I don't care, like it's the one that I haven't tried. It's the only one that I haven't tried. Like it's it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's totally going to be a different cigar. I mean, I'll tell you, the recipe didn't change. It's really tobacco, maybe the sources, the fields. That's what changes. But the actual seed varietals and blend that went into the original are true to what's going into this Redux. You try to come as close as possible. It's impossible to be dead on.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm excited to try it in the original format because I really like the blend because I tried it in the skinny monster and I tried it in the pudgy monster and I thought it was sensational. I'm still a big Jason guy. That's the Voorhees is probably still my if someone asked me to like put a gun in my hand,
We
say,
just
pick
call
one.
it Jason now. I kind of got rid of the whole JV13 thing or whatever, but it's just now called Jason.
Yeah. I love that blend. I've loved it in all. I loved it in the skinny. I loved it in its original format. I thought it was terrific. I thought the Michael might still to me might be the most underrated.
I love the Michael. I think I think people were expecting it to be like this strong, badass cigar, and I was like, Michael was kind of a silent killer. It crept up on you, and if you smoke a Michael, especially without food, it's gonna creep up on you.
No, it had some giddy up to it. That's for sure. And
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And I know that everyone was going crazy when you did the larger formats of the Chuck and the Tiff. And I remember you and I having this discussion about how of course nothing wrong with the Chuck, but everyone was like buying up all these Chucks, and you're like, man, I really like the Tiff. And I took you up on it. I bought more Tiffs than I did the Chuck, and I wholeheartedly agree. I thought the Tiff was fantastic in the larger format.
Yeah, I think the Tiff's a sleeper, and obviously, Tiff and Chuck are the same insides.
Right, just different wrappers.
It's just a different wrapper, and I think it brought more attention to Connecticut wrappers. That's for sure, because it's not a milder blend, and you throw a Connecticut on it, and it changes your opinion about what a Connecticut's supposed to be, or what the old people said a Connecticut was supposed to be. Because the old days, everybody said, "Oh, Connecticut's a mild cigar," but that's not the case.
Yeah, and see, this is what I was talking about. Like you were going back to the original funny point from this night of like the broadleaf Sumatra debate that I found myself unknowingly in. It was how much fun you have and how you when you venture off and everything. These are cigars that aren't. No one's sitting here questioning like when you did the TEF, for example, like no one sat there and questioned like why did Pete venture off from his wheelhouse? It's like no, it's a great cigar, and I think it shows to not only your creative prowess, but but your willingness to risk a little bit, especially if the tobacco is there and the product is there. You ultimately put out a great cigar.
Well, Bear, you're smoking a Cabai One, and when I came out with Cabai One in 2005, everybody who smoked Cabai One, well, not everybody, but there was a small sector of people that were like, "It's not a Tatuaje." I go, "It's not supposed to be."
Exactly. It's called Cabai One.
Yeah, like, plain and simple. It's got a different name. I'm not just going to sit there and make everything a Tatuaje and slap a different band on it. That's no fun. You have to have those little things that kind of spark your creativity. It's like you do a hard hitting heavy metal song and then you throw in a ballad, and I guess to bag on Metallica, I go that might be that was doing Metallica for a second. I went from Ride the Lightning to to injustice for all.
One of the few musical references that I'll get. I'm not the biggest musical consumer out there, but I appreciate music. You know, I suppose as much as the next person, and there are certain things about it that I like. I'm not a huge music consumer, but I appreciate
Well, I mean,
when people.
is it because you like? I'm a musician, obviously by my history, but I just love music in general. So I listen to everything. I mean, obviously being exposed to all the Latin and reggaeton music that I'm, you know, exposed to from the family, but like I listen to Pavarotti all the time, and then the next, you know, I'll go into my car and I'll turn on, you know, some British rock, you know. So I'm all over the map. There, I went through my rap phase, I went through my country phase, you know, like, so music in
Country.
general for
Okay.
me, you know, because music for me is like a cigar, either it's good or it's not. And there's a billion different cigars and there's a billion different songs and music genres, but in the end of the day, there's some good ones and there's some bad ones. And that's why I like music, because I can gravitate towards something that I think is great for me, but it's definitely not in the normal wheelhouse that I'm supposed to be in, which is the rock and roll wheelhouse, right?
Right.
Like right now, I'm hooked on a cigar on a song that was done by a guy by the name of Roberto Carlos back in the day, and it's been redone by this girl and this artist named Chacal out of Cuba, and it's called Si Piensa Si Quieres, and I love it. There's something about the song. It gets you going. It's uplifting. I actually woke my wife up with it this morning. I had it playing in the kitchen. I decided to add it to the master bedroom on Sonos and woke her up with it. And I asked her, I said, "Did you enjoy it?" She goes, "Yeah, I was dancing in bed."
Could have been a worse, with different reaction. You're like, yeah, I would have appreciated, just not at 8:00 in the morning or whatever it was. You know.
Well, I will tell you that I accidentally turned it on the middle child's bedroom also. I don't think he appreciated that, but I think I might have had the volume down so he didn't hear it. He's a heavy sleeper.
Well, and I think that again, kind of, we keep going back to this debate that I found myself in. But I'm eclectic too. Like, I like a lot of different types of music. That's probably why I've never really kind of just
Up to one thing.
Yeah, gone into. I'm the same thing with cigars. The same thing with like spirits. A lot of people in this industry are heavy bourbon people, heavy Scotch people, and I'm just like, I mean, I'm drinking a bourbon right now, but I like everything. I'm a big fan of tequila and cigars. That's kind of like where
Me too. Me too. I traditionally, for tequila, I tend to steer towards a lot of the depends. Summer days, hot summer days, I'll do a silver, a good silver on ice.
Yeah.
But then with a little bit of chill in the air, and when I say a little bit, it doesn't happen a lot in Miami, but it's happening tonight. I'll do an extra añejo or an añejo tequila, which I can just sip on, which will give me that heat that I'm looking for, that I'm not getting from the weather outside.
No, absolutely. The reposado is probably my jam when it comes to tequila. I probably gravitate more towards that. But yeah, silver on ice, especially when it's really hot, just it hits the spot. But this kind of plays into what I was going to talk, what I kind of alluded to earlier when we were talking about nerding out.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I've had the opportunity to interview you once before, and I've certainly, visited a number of interviews that you've done. And and certainly you don't necessarily hold the franchise on this. There's plenty of people in the industry that kind of nerd out on the details. But like I said before earlier, and I'm not trying to degrade anybody, but sometimes you think it's kind of a little bit more maybe playing to the crowd or a little nuance, but because you've been doing it for a long time. I mean, I went back to some interviews that you did, print interviews that you did 10, 15 years ago. And like you were talking about primings then. And and the level of detail in terms of like the quality that you and the manufacturing of the cigar, and like, so I mean, it's something that you really pay attention to. And I'm sure, like I said, you certainly don't hold the franchise on it. I mean, that this is an industry
No,
of details, but you really kind of dove into it early and kind of have held fast to it as well. I mean, it's never left you. Is that fair?
I think, yeah, I think for me, I was really just outspoken about it early on, because coming into this industry, there were so many, like, for lack of better words, there were so many secrets of like what went into a cigar. You know, why is that cigar so special, or why did you like it? And I believe the educational thing, you know, education's power, you know, knowledge is power. And when you know what's going into a product, you you can get into it more, you can understand it better. I think that's why musicians, when they listen to different types of music, they can get into it a little bit more because they know what's going on. With cigar smokers, way back when, it's like no one told you what wrapper it was, no one told you anything about the cigar. um that's I was very adamant about, like, if anything ever changed, I was going to make sure that people knew that something was going to change.
Mhm.
Like the early days, we were using Corojo from a supplier for a wrapper, and the wrapper just wasn't performing well, so we had to look for an alternative, and we found Habano Ecuador from Oliva, and that's what changed uh, in Tatuaje. And I made sure that people knew that it's no longer Corojo 99, it's Habano Ecuador. Um, I think it's important for consumers to understand, or to know what's going into the cigar. That way they kind of get more involved in it. I don't know. It's just a personal thing for me.
No, and I think that should be to commended, because I think, like you said, there are a lot of like secrets in this industry, and there, you know, that's always like a favorite. You know, we're talking about debates earlier. That's a favorite debate inside of cigar lounges everywhere. Is, you know, talking about, oh, this cigar tastes different than the original, or this is, and you've always been able to say, yeah, it does. Of course, it does. So we're talking about a vintage product here, and you know, you strive, of course, and have achieved to an exceptional level consistency over the years, especially with your core competency. But like that, you know, you've also never shied away from that fact, and that you are one of the few people that do that, and I think you deserve credit for that.
Yeah, I think it was even in the early days when I was telling certain things about, you know, what was going into the cigar. Obviously, we're not going to give you all the secrets, because there are certain things that we just won't tell you. I mean, yeah, we'll say high priming, whatever, you know, we might say a high priming Ligero. Obviously, the Ligero is a high priming, right? But I might say it's from Jalapa, but I'm not going to tell you all the details, because I don't want the whole blend to be out there. But I am confident to know that if I give that blend, the exact blend of something out there, that they're still not, no one's going to be able to recreate it exactly, because they don't have access to the same farms that I've worked with. So, you know, I think what pissed me off early in the early days, even having the brand by this time, but when I would I would see people start talking about, hey, yeah, I got this new Jalapa Rosado wrapper, and I'm like, you didn't tell me anything. It's from Jalapa and it's a color of Rosado. What's the seed? You know, they but to the point where people were like, oh, Rosado, man, that Rosado seed is amazing. I'm like, no, dude, it's not a seed. Rosado is a color. Like, plain and simple, it's a color. It comes from Jalapa. You know, that particular wrapper that guy's talking about happens to come from Jalapa, which is a great region for wrappers, and it happened to be Rosado and shade, but he didn't tell you anything else. Is it Criollo 98? Is it Criollo 99? Is it Habano? What is it? Like, tell the consumer, because the consumer is gonna get more involved and get more behind the product if they know more about what you do.
Yeah, I remember, speaking of Rosa, I remember having that discussion once, actually, you know, in the humidor at Michael's, where a consumer was like, "Oh, I'm a big fan of Rosado," and I was like, "Well, which one?" And like, "No, Rosado," and I was like, "Well, but Rosado is a that's not a type of tobacco. It's not like, Ecuadorian or, Corojo or anything like that. So, and to your point, and so it ended up being one of the most memorable discussions that I've had in the humor, because then a lot of other people chimed in, and it just became this really, really great discussion in a humidor, and it was really fantastic. I really enjoyed that, and I certainly miss it for sure. But I think that's, like you said, it's one of those things when you educate consumers and you educate people, it really brings the fun out in this. You know, it's funny you talked about you don't want to give away too much of the secret because you don't want to give away the recipe, and that was one of the things that I thought that was really cool, like about like some of Steve Saka's earlier projects. Like he went into some like exceptional level of detail. I'm like, man, like someone could totally just rip this off, and but obviously there's
Not really though.
tricks of the I was gonna say there's obviously tricks of the trade and things that you guys, as manufacturers and blenders only know. And I know you've always been very quick to give all the credit where the credit is due, that to your father-in-law and to your brother-in-law, who just do an exceptional job there at my father. So but yeah, it was just an observation that I found, like as I was kind of preparing for the show in the last few weeks, and actually even longer than that, even preparing for the show, just something that I observed about you was just the level of detail that you paid very early on before it kind of became a quote unquote thing. So
yeah, it wasn't really trying to romance the product. It was really trying to give the consumer details. I mean, listen, when you drink a lot of bourbon, it's usually a high, it's a high wheat base or a high corn base, right? So you kind of understand where that's going, but they don't give you the exact recipe of what their mash bill is.
Right.
Although if you go to Buffalo Trace, they'll tell you that they have like 5 mash bills, and that, Blanton's and Pappy are the same mash bill, but they happen to sit in a different room. That's it. Right?
Yeah. No, and it just goes to that, that comment I made a second ago about Steve. I'm not disparaging him for anything. And you made the great point, like how you really can't, because I mean, it's incredibly hard what you do. It's incredibly hard.
I have it easy compared to what Jaime and Pepin do.
Exactly.
But I would say I would actually I would probably lean more credit towards Jaime, because Jaime's the Pepin's the master. He knows everything that's going on, but Jaime's the guy that keeps all the glue. He's the glue that keeps everything running and keeps everything going, keeps it all together. And without his knowledge of being an agronomist, there's certain things that, even when you look at Pepin being the Guajiro of the family, the old guy that just walks on the farm and can look at something and say, we need to do it wrong. Jaime knows all the technical parts of being able to fix it. Pepin knows the Guajiro version, the farmer, the countryman version of, like, I think we need to do this. Jaime gets a little bit more technical, and he knows how to fix something the right way. So I give a lot of credit to Jaime, because he busts his ass, and a lot of people don't. Like, someone asked me the other day, like, who would you say is kind of the unsung cigar maker or blender in the cigar industry? And I said, Jaime Garcia, because he doesn't get enough credit. Like, he just doesn't. Like, everybody loves the Jaime Garcia cigar, but no one knows how much work that man does. So I got to give Jaime props.
No, I think that's fair. I think yeah, if you polled 100 cigar smokers, I think, yeah, and gave him like a couple of spots and everything. And I know you've always held him in high regard and everything. I don't think he makes enough lists, like, to put a word on it.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. I'll give you another one. This is like a personal one for me. When it comes to art in our industry, like creativity and artistry, and I do things on Illustrator, so it's cheating at art in a sense, because Illustrator, I became well versed on, and I'm able to do box art for my boxes really easy. But my boxes are very simple. You know, they're not over the top crazy. But when you think about artistry, Alcides Montenegro, who is my my wife's cousin, who is the GM here in Miami, he does all the art for everything that the My Father family does.
Wow.
When I say all the art, it's all done by hand first in large format, and then they digitize it and bring it down and vectorize it into Illustrator, and they work from there. Like, he's just a super talented artist, and no one's ever given him credit. So I'm going to say this right now, that I think that he's one of the best artists in our industry when it comes to cigar art.
I love, since he's the man behind it all, I love what he did with, forgive the term, I just can't think of a better one at the moment, the My Fatherizing of the Fonseca line of what he did. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that went through a lot of stages, but when he showed us the version that he was working on, I was like, obviously I'm not involved in the sense of like I make decisions for the family, but I'm always with my wife, and the conversation always comes up to like, what do you think? And I'm like, he fucking nailed it. Like I think the My Fatherizing of Fonseca is actually the perfect term for it, because he really did make it. He really did make it a My Father product, but it's still that Fonseca that you would think about history of Fonseca, just with a My Father twist.
Yeah, it was really, I really applauded it. I thought it was terrific, and the cigars have been like I said, I'm really a big fan of the cedar wrap version of it, but it was just phenomenal. But one of these other projects that you were working on down there, now this is another Redux, but the bringing back of the Old Man in the Sea. So
yeah, so the Old Man of the Sea is technically not a Redux, because it's a new version of the Old Man of the Sea. This is a Fausto. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, I mean, this is where, you know, obviously the consumer side, you know, I listen to everybody, and there's not a lot of times where I do things because the consumers are saying, hey, can you do this? But I listen to the sense that people were digging the Fausto blend, and they really liked the Fausto Lancero in the sampler box, but they wish they could get more of them. And it was a way for me to bring back the Old Man of the Sea, but offer that Fausto Lancero in a different style. So you'll get the one Fausto Lancero in the box next to the three Culebras. The first three people that smoked the Fausto Culebra were myself, Jaime Garcia, and Gustavo Cura from Oliva Tobacco.
Yeah, I was really excited when I saw it, because I'm a big fan of the Fausto blend. The Fausto, you know, we've always had the saying at Michael's, you know, because there, you know, one of life's greatest blessings is working in a cigar shop, when you can, you know, you have the cigar world technically at your fingertips, and it's also the greatest curse too, because sometimes you walk in there and it's like,
what do you smoke today?
Yeah, and then we have this phrase at Michael's, it's when in doubt, Fausto.
Wow,
and
I like that.
And it's something that's with Tracy Spence, you know, who you know very well,
yeah,
was would kind of laid that on me, and it's never let me down, because I've had that I've been at the apex of that decision several times, and I'm like, okay, just rely on the old adage that we have here, and it just never lets you down. So I was really excited about the Old Man in the Sea with the Fausto and everything. So before we kind of get into the details of why bringing back the project, and with this, even though you just kind of touched on a little bit, I'm interested. Do you happen to know the origin of why Culebras actually came to be? Because there's actually a couple of theories out there, and I wanted to know if you knew a different one. I was going to share the two that I know of, but I was wondering if you knew.
I heard one recently, and I did not know this. I heard it came from Indonesia, I think, originally.
That is one. The
but
Philippines.
it was always the story of the rollers at the factory were allowed to take a certain amount of cigars with them a day
Mm-hmm.
for their personal use, but they couldn't take production cigars, and they would twist them up like that in a braid, and those were their 3 cigars that they could take, or something like that. I don't know. I think I forgot more of the story than I know anymore, but the Indonesian one, I think, was really one I learned most recently, because I didn't really go deep diving on that. For me, it was always, Cuba kind of started it, but it wasn't really Cuba. So
Yeah, that is actually one of the versions I've heard. So yeah, so the concept is they didn't want cigar rollers to take regular production items home, where they were just stuffing in their pockets. So you were allotted like 3 a day or whatever, or allotted whatever. And the idea was that, okay, well, if we twist them into a Culebra, like no one's going to want to buy these ugly looking cigars.
yeah,
So those are the ones you get. And the other story that I heard was there was this other story out of the Philippines that, if by making them into the Culebra, it would somehow help the cigars mature faster, which of course is a bunch of hogwash. But it was an interesting, at least when you're talking about very early scientific development, an interesting thought.
yeah. I suppose I could see it. I don't know. I think there's where you find that there's so much romance in this industry. You don't know what the real story is anymore.
So to go back to the original Old Man in the Sea, and then obviously this new take on it, again, was it just the homage to history that you wanted the opportunity to, or was it something that really just excited you about this really truly unique,
Well,
take on it?
it was funny because Dion and I, uh, we would literally text and talk pretty much every day. I had already had my brand for 3 or 4 years by the time Dion came out with his brand. And literally at the same time, Dion be like, "Hey, I'm doing this." I'm like, "Shit, dude, I'm doing the same thing right now." Stuff like that. Like we would end up, to the point where one day he texted me, he goes, "We're not allowed to talk to each other for a while because we seem to somehow through mental telepathy, we're coming up with the same shit." And I got a giggle out of it. And he had come up with a Culebra for his Illusione line, and I said, "Don't worry, dude. If I do a Culebra, I'll do it way later down the road after you've had your time selling a ton of Culebras." And then George Brightman, who was one of what I would say a mentor in the industry for me, came to me one day. He says, "I have an idea for you. It's called Old Man in the Sea. I want you to take the Cazadori that you do and then do a Culebra of the Cazadoris. And the Old Man is the one Cazadori next to a Culebra of Cazadoris." And the factory had never done a Culebra before. And I didn't see the comfort level of trying to braid a 6 3/8 cigar, even though I know Cuba's done it with like the Partagas, which is even shorter. Davidoff's done it with a shorter cigar with a bigger ring gauge also. I thought the Lancero made more sense because the Lancero is definitely one of those old man cigars. So George kind of gave me the pitch, and I kind of rolled with it in my own fashion of saying, okay, the Lancero makes more sense, and when you take the Lancero and make a Culebra out of it, it's gonna be really ugly. When you pull out one of those sticks out of that Culebra, it's gonna have a nice little bend to it. So it all stemmed from George though. I mean, he gave me the Cazadori. The C was supposed to be the Cazadori and the Culebra, but I just figured the Lancero made more sense, more special, I guess.
Hands down, one of my favorite interviews in the cigar industry, period, not just with you, period, is George interviewing you.
Yeah,
And
I love talking with George. I mean, I said I was a C- student. When I'm around George, I feel like, maybe an F student, because he's got so much knowledge, and my knowledge is cigars and some about music, but he's the book of everything. Like he knows he, he knows a lot of everything, and some of it might be useless knowledge, but it's still fun. It's fun to listen to him. It's just fun to hear him talk, because you always pick up something from him.
I'm looking forward to the day that to actually meet that gentleman. I just, yeah, I've always been I've been a fan of his, and that, like I said, by far one of my favorite interviews period in the cigar industry was the interview that he did with you. Still, I think it's still climbing, still getting a ton of views on YouTube and stuff. I think at this point, I think it's over 12 years old. It's just awesome.
Yeah, super old.
Um,
Actually, the first one I did with him, I think it might have been closer to 9 or 10 years old now. So
I knew it was up there. Yeah, it was at least, yeah, I was going to say about a decade for sure. The first.
yeah, and I've known George for 28 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I met him at my first job, actually, at Gus's Smoke Shop in Studio City, California. He was actually out in Los Angeles doing some work for Cigar Aficionado, where he used to work at one time. And I started kicking up a conversation with him, and I realized that the guy knew more about, everything in the cigar industry. And he was kind of part of like the early stages of Project X from Planet Nine. So, I mean, he's been around the block many times. You know what Project X from Planet Nine is, right?
No, but I'm hoping you're going to enlighten me.
That was the original nickname for Opus X.
I'll be damned.
Yeah.
Now that you said it, it's ringing very, very, very vague bells, but
Yeah.
Yeah. If you'd given me 100 guesses right then, I would have missed them all. But yeah, no, very vague bells setting off there. That's awesome. So first of all, I lit up my second cigar for the night. And I know he's watching, so I want to give credit where credit's due. To our mutual friend of ours, we were talking about Michael's a second ago, Austin Borsteed.
Yep.
Who's has been, guy in your corner for as long as I've known him, and probably as long as he's been smoking cigars. I think he's always been a Tatuaje guy. And this cigar that I'm smoking right now, I would not be probably not be enjoying as much or smoking if it weren't for him, because he originally pointed me to it. And I've been smoking cigars longer than Austin, and he pointed me to it, and that's the J21 Reserva. So, and
the J21 Johnson, two meanings to that name. Johnson 21, because 21 was our number that we used in all our sports when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
It started with my brother, obviously, because he was the oldest, even though he likes to call himself Pete's younger brother. So by the time I got into, sports, I would start using the number 21. Also, it stemmed from our love of Roberto Clemente, actually. We were all Roberto Clemente fans, and that's where the 21 comes from. But it also, at the same time that I was working on the cigar, a buddy of mine had a dog named Joss that was 21 years old when she passed.
Oh my gosh.
And she passed literally, I don't know how she lasted so long. And she passed right around the same time I was doing it. I said, well, I'm gonna call it J21. It's gonna have a couple meanings to it, but one of them is Joss 21. So I haven't talked to this guy Billy in a while. Billy Bacon's his name, but I gotta believe that J21 is probably still one of his favorite cigars.
It's definitely one of my favorites that you make, and yeah, I'll props to Austin for pointing me in that direction a long time ago. And he's certainly taken his support to another level, because He's the proud owner of a license plate in a certain state that sports your name, Tatuaje.
I know, I saw it. You guys have cool plates in Texas, so that plate is all black and white. I was like, okay, it couldn't be a more fitting license plate.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was shared to me. Frankly, I just found out about this evening. It was shown by another friend of ours, Brandon Payne, who shared it with me. He's like, "Hey, did you see that he got
Awesome plate?"
I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Look at the plate," and he sent me a picture of it. I was like, "That's awesome." So it's totally fitting. I love it. It's perfect. So this is the part of the show where we have a little bit more fun. These are some of our more fun segments, and this is our one must go. So you didn't participate in the last time that we had the privilege of having you on here, Pete. But so as always, one must go is brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana and distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. So smoke one today and start living united. Now, because you're a very special guest, Pete, we're going to do a triple dose of this, and it's very. I try to make it appropriate for my guest each week, and so we're going to go three, kind of almost rapid fire of one must go. But the concept is I give you three things, and one's got to go. Plain and simple. One's got to go, and you can interpret it however you want. It's a completely open-ended thing, but this is meant to be fun. So we've been talking a lot about spirits tonight and cigars, obviously, but obviously one of your claims to fame is your love of wine, and you've actually even made and bottled your own wine, which I actually have had the privilege of drinking, which was actually fabulous. Really loved it. And so we're going to go three tiers here, and I've grouped them specifically in a different way. It ain't go terribly scientific here, but we're going to go French wine regions. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So here's your first grouping. Okay. So out of these three, you have to, one must go.
This is an easy one for me.
So the first grouping is the Alsace, and I'm going to butcher some of the, even though I took French. Alsace, which is known for their Pinot Gris, Riesling, and Cremant d'Alsace. The second region is Champagne, which is obviously known for champagne. And then the third one, which I have a feeling is probably going to be the one that stays, is going to be the Loire Valley, which of course is known for Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, and one of my personal favorites, Cabernet Franc. I'm a huge fan of the Loire Valley Cabernet Francs. I think they're fantastic.
Okay, so this is a tough one because I actually thought you were going to go with different regions. Oh man, I'll say I'll get rid of Alsace, and that's tough because it was getting rid of either Loire or Alsace.
Really, I thought Loire would be the absolute one that stays.
It depends. No, yeah, Alsace.
So are you well, obviously, I mean, are you a fan of champagne, or is there another part of champagne that you really really enjoy?
No, I actually enjoy champagne. I don't drink it a lot. My wife does. The bubbles get to me, but I still love the character of it, and I still love how different from bottle to bottle you can get. Not from the same producer, but from different producers. There's a lot out there. There's so many bottles of champagne underneath the main city, which is Reims, or which is REIMS. It's just like, it's kind of looks like a little bit of an industrial city, but underground there's like, I don't know, 30 billion bottles of fucking champagne. There's not that many, but there's a lot underneath the city.
Well, so many people, like, they gravitate towards the name brands, like the Cristal or the Behringer, or obviously Dom Perignon, right? The big houses. Excuse me. I thought this was going to be. I'm surprised that you were considering kicking Loire Valley out. I just thought that would be one that you, because you're a big fan of Cabernet Franc too, right? Or am I completely?
Well, yeah, I am, and there are some Cabernet Francs from that region that I absolutely love, but there are some Cabernet Francs from that region that are so overly funky that you have to get used to them. And when I first experimented with that region, especially with Cabernet Francs, I was a little turned off by the funk, but the older I get, I actually enjoy that funk. And to the point where I told Dan from New Event, I said, let's start a podcast specifically based off of wine, not cigars, just based off of wine. And I wanted to call it Bring Out the Funk. And it was all about finding wines around the world that might be overly funky, that you want to kind of bring people's attention to it and try to get them to understand why they are the way they are. It was a joke one day where it all started last year to this whole Zoom boom, right?
Right.
Like, what can we do when we're stranded at home? And the Bring Out the Funk with Dan would have been a lot of fun, but it was wine based. We were going to try to get away with it with doing no cigars.
I still would have watched. Absolutely, I would have been thoroughly entertained for sure. So if you ever want to bring that back up to him, you definitely have one subscriber, and I'd sign up for sure. All right,
Very
so
cool.
grouping 2. Now I think this one's going to be a little bit harder, but again, I thought the other one was going to be easy, but apparently I was missed off. So this is the second. So the second grouping is Burgundy, which is of course known for their Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which I'm also a huge fan of Pinot Noir. Beaujolais, big Gamay is a big variant out of that region, and Bordeaux, which of course very infamous for their own blends in the Sauvignon Blanc and Citronade variants as well. So Bordeaux, Beaujolais, and Burgundy. 3 Bs. Which one goes?
That's an easy Beaujolais.
Okay. Why is it so easy?
I have a love for both Bordeaux and Burgundy. I've never been to Burgundy. I've joked about driving to Burgundy. Actually, Dan and I were in Bordeaux, goofing around, and we decided to travel down to the coast of Bordeaux, like just south of Bordeaux, to see this giant sand dune in this one area. And when we got done with the sand dune, which took us, that was about an hour out of our trip, of like, okay, we're up here, let's go back down, let's get back in the car. And we started like literally GPSing places to go, and we punched in Burgundy. It was way too far, so we're like, yeah, well, let's skip that one. We're like, we could drive all the way there, or we could go back to the chateau and drink. We went back to the chateau. Yeah, Bordeaux would never leave my heart. Yeah,
I was going to say this is the one I thought that's exactly the way I went. I was like, man, if I started playing the assumption game here, I'm going to keep losing. But no, that one played out exactly the way that I thought. All right, so final grouping, which will give you an idea of which ones are out, because I'm going to tell you which 2 regions I actually left out.
Okay.
The less fancy named Southwest version, which is also known for its Bordeaux blends, and actually a Malbec I found was actually very popular in the Southwest region, and Corsica, which is a big rosé place. Those 2 I left out of this. So the third grouping, which I think I have an idea, but again, could be wrong. The Rhone Valley, which of course is known for Rhone variant Syrah and the Marsanne Roussanne variants. The Roussanne region, province, which is near Nice, for if people want to play the geography game, which is also known for rosé, similar to Corsica. And then I'm going to butcher this, Pete, and you can help me out here. The Languedoc Roussillon, which is also known for its Rhones, rosé, and Crémant de la Meuse.
Yeah, I would probably go with Roussanne.
That one's got to go?
Yeah, I mean, only because the Languedoc has so many choices, and a lot of great rosés come out of the Languedoc. And then the Rhone Valley is just special. I mean, Rhone Syrahs are, if you never had an Hermitage, you're missing something, because it's one of those wines that will just kind of like take you to a different level. But what's cool about all those regions
Mhm.
all of them make like their own versions of pretty much everything. Like Burgundy has a Cremant, which is fabulous. It's just like it's a champagne of Burgundy, right? But they
Mhm.
can't call it champagne.
Right.
There's rosés in all those regions, which I can tell you, I've had some fabulous Bordeaux rosés. I've had some fabulous Burgundy rosés, Rhone rosés. I mean, so they all do what every region does. They're just more specialized in certain varietals, obviously. But to taste rosés from all those regions, if you go to Burgundy and you do a Pinot rosé, and then I'll go to Bordeaux and you do a rosé that was made out of Merlot or Cabernet, and then or Cabernet Franc even, and then you go to the Rhone and have a rosé that's done with Syrah base in it. They're so different, but they're still basing off the same style. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's such good wine over there. It's crazy, and that's the same thing with the United States. So there's so many different regions where I pick, certain wines over others. Obviously, I'm going to do Cabernet. I'm going to go to Napa.
Mhm.
If I'm going to do Zinfandel, I might go to the Lodi
Lodi.
area, or even Paso Robles, which makes some fabulous zins. But every once in a while, you can find some Napa Valley zin that will blow your head off.
I'm a big fan of zins from Lodi, particularly like Old Vine.
Yeah,
Old Vine zins from Lodi tend to be just I just think they're spectacular. Uh,
fabulous.
the it's interesting. My love of Bordeaux actually, Pete, can be attributed to you, because I remember not paying too much attention for whatever God knows what reason. I mean, it's in
I
very
would say
infamous region.
probably more people are scared of Bordeaux because they think of the name Bordeaux and they think they're going to end up overpaying for wine. But there are some great values in that region, and there are a lot of sub-regions within that still fall in the Bordeaux Superior group, but they're just sub-regions of the most famous regions. So like, if you want expensive wine that's really good, you go to Margaux or Pauillac or Saint Estèphe. But if you go just to the Medoc area where that covers all those areas, there's some great inexpensive Medoc wines which end up becoming what they call Bordeaux Superiors or just Medoc regions. Same thing with the right bank with Saint-Emilion and Pomerol. I love Pomerol. I love Saint-Emilion. But if you step, 5 kilometers out into Côte de Castillon, or what they call Côte de Bordeaux now, there's fabulous wines for pennies on the dollar compared to the stuff that's being produced in Saint-Emilion.
I think that and actually I said I attributed my fascination and likeness for Bordeaux because of you. I think French wine in general actually, I started getting more into it because of you specifically, just because I know you've talked about it very early on, and I just remember getting into it because of you, and I just found I found this world of this kind of this world which the entire wine drinking world already obviously knows about, but for when you're on your own journey of self-discovery, it's you have your own journey of self-discovery, and so it's been really fantastic kind of going through all the different regions of France and just trying a lot of these ones that are infamous to these regions, but even like you said, there's like these really great wines that come from these regions where they're not known for it necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll see a lot of wine regions all over the world that are dabbling in varietals that are not the most popular varietal for the region, but they still make amazing wines because I don't know. For me, with Bordeaux and France for wine, it's really about history, and I can't leave out Italy when it comes to the history of wine either. Italy's got even more history going on.
Right.
And there's some amazing wines, but Italy's so tough. There's so many different areas of Italy. And even in the strangest areas where you'd think you're supposed to get a certain style of grape, you end up getting a bottle of Merlot from that area, and you're like, what the like, this is crazy. I don't know. The wine world is there's just too much out there. No one could ever know it all. I mean, even the sommeliers have trouble, knowing every single thing that's out there, and there's just too much of it.
Oh, indeed. That's crazy. But that was our one must go segment. Thank you, Pete, for going triple tier, man. We went through those, man. So I thought it would be a fun exercise, and it certainly proved to be so. So that was our one must go segment. As always, it's brought to you by United Cigars. Smoke one today and start living United. Distributors of the Jose Dominguez, Bandolera, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines, and of course featuring the La Giana Havana cigar. Smoke one today and start living United. Now, Pete, I'm going to give you court here because this next segment is something that's become it really has become my favorite segment on the show. I've really enjoyed this project that I launched on my birthday back in October, where I've given my guests the opportunity to spotlight and discuss nonprofits or charities of their choosing that they want to bring attention to, maybe even raise some money for some great causes. Your brother and Dan had we did a double dose of charities when they were on my show a couple months back, and it was fantastic. So this is when I posed this to you, I had an idea of where it was going, but as I got more into it, I was just enamored by the story. But I don't want to steal any of the spotlight from you. So I'm gonna actually step away for a second. Nothing's wrong with my connection. I'm gonna step away for a second, but I want you to talk about your charity and why it is so important to you.
Yeah, I mean, Gulfstream, Guardian Angels, Rottweiler Rescue here in Miami. To me, I mean, Rottweilers mean a lot to me. They've been my dog breed of choice since I was since my first Rottweiler I ever got when I was 21 years old in Los Angeles, and I've never had a home without a Rottweiler in it. And when I was doing a podcast with Boveda, actually, they asked me the same thing, and I knew about Gulfstream Guardian Angels down here in Miami, but I had not started to support them yet. And what happened was Boveda decided to do this whole thing where they wanted to kind of tie into the whole K222 thing, and for every so much money they would raise, I would end up matching it, and that's where it all started for Tatuaje and me supporting Gulfstream. Since then, I could continually contribute to the charity just because I believe in what they do. The people really care about the breed, and they really care about dogs that need help. I always say, they're obviously they don't have a voice, and we're their voice for them, and they're doing great work that I'm happy to support, and I'm thankful for you for bringing it to people's attention on your podcast, because it's definitely one of those nonprofits that I lean towards, because I know they need it, and they get all the money that's being contributed, which is really cool. Because I as much as we can say shit about Facebook, the Facebook, the ease of doing a Facebook charity, or contributions from Facebook charities are very easy. Facebook, I think, covers all the expenses for the transaction fees, and they give all the money to the organization, which is really nice. Otherwise, every once in a while, I just PayPal them money. So it's an important. I mean, they being a dog lover and a Rottweiler specific dog lover. I was looking for something that I knew I could help out with, and it's thrilling to see the work they're doing, and it's actually nice to see when the dogs get their forever home. So
This is a really personal subject for me too. And before I'm posting it in the chat, if anyone in our audience feels so called, please consider donating to this amazing cause. And I'm posting it. I'm posting the link in the chat right now. But you can go back to the previous posts. There was the advertisement for tonight's show, and there's a donate button on that for Gulfstream Guardian Angels. And I'm pleased, Pete. I'm sure you saw it. I'm so pleased in the amount. I mean, we've raised over $1,000 already.
Well, I will say that the one big donation was from me. Sorry, I kind of killed my old donation concept by being the one that donated, but it was an easy way for me to make sure that the organization got more money. I had just sent them money 2 weeks ago, anyways, but I think it was like 2 weeks ago. But I figured this is a great way to give them a little bit more, and then of course my wife decides to use it as her fundraiser for her birthday, which is coming up on Tuesday. So I think on her pace, so she might even beat ours. My wife's more popular than I am, so.
So I actually donated on both. As I've promised and pledged every week, I'm making a small donation as well to each charity that's brought to the attention of my guests. It's something that my wife and I discussed, and when we're spreading out donations to every single charity, unfortunately the amount, the quantity definitely is reflective of that, spreading the love around. But it's something that we really wanted to, that we thought that was really important. Yes, and I saw that your wife did it for her birthday, and I was like, oh, this is fitting. This is beautiful. This is we're going to be able to raise a lot of money for a truly great cause. Now, you and Bovida are actually featured on their main page.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
I think it's really cool that they do that, but I was to the point where I was like, you can take it down. Like, you don't have to have it on your webpage constantly. I mean, that portion of the contribution was over, but they love the fact that the cigar industry is actually being. I mean, the fact that people in the cigar industry have been really supportive to their organization. So Saints and Sinners has contributed money to them, obviously through Tatuaje, myself a lot, and then now with my wife and what you did this week, which was awesome. So we constantly try to find ways to help them out, because I know the work that they're doing is a lot of work, and they get a lot of contributions from the different animal hospitals that they work with. But it's constantly, we see that they need stuff for their shelter dogs, and they always put up a link on Amazon that says, hey, like a shopping list on Amazon for things that we can buy for them. So,
oh, that's really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Need to find that.
Amazon allows charities to put up a shopping list, and it will actually tell you like whether or not something's been fulfilled or not. Like they have, like right now they needed dog food and dog beds, and one of the bags of dog food that they needed, like they had three bags out of the 7 that they needed, type of thing. So if you don't want to donate money, you can always contribute to them via one of their posts on their Facebook page that will actually give you a shopping list to buy things off.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm going to find that link, and I'll put it in the show notes as well as the donate link too. And we've already have a couple of people pledging donations in the chat tonight. Just fantastic.
Well, I appreciate everybody that's doing that. It's really cool. I mean, you listen, man, donating to charities is not for everybody. And I know a lot of people question whether or not the monies are going to actually go to the charity, because you hear about all these big charitable organizations where, 30% of the money really goes to the charity and the rest of it goes into some executive pocket. But these people utilize every dime that they get, so it all helps.
True story. And about that, and another true story that I was actually captured is there one of their highlighted stories on this. I want to spend a little more time on this. I was I mean, like I said, I had a feeling I knew where you were, the direction you were going to go, but I really just, I fell in love with this organization's story, the work. I could see that the work that they're doing. I know how passionate you are about it as well. But it was a story, and I'm posting this in the chat too. It's about Susanna, which was a
Oh,
Rottweiler that was found in a dumpster there in Miami. This was the story's a couple years old, but they still have it highlighted. It's just, I think it's a really great tribute to, and I'm they probably have done hundreds of these types of rescues. It's just, it's horrific. It really
yeah.
is. But horrific in the sense of the reality that Susanna found herself in. But you know, what a blessing to have an organization like Gulfstream that, you know, could literally bring her back to health, and you know, and rehome her and hundreds of other dogs to just loving homes. People are going to treat them right, just like I know that you have for years. You've been you've always been a big Rottweiler fan, from my understanding, right? That's always
Well,
been.
animal lover in general.
Mm-hmm.
Rottweiler is obviously is you know my breed specific, but animals in general have always been a thing for me. Like it goes back to the first year that the CRA came out. I went to the trade show and I donated a certain amount of money per box that I sold at the trade show to the CRA, but I also matched that dollar amount for the ASPCA at the time. But the
Oh.
ASPCA was was kind of it was kind of weird because like they didn't want to take money from anybody. They're like, well, how are you raising the money and why are you donating the money? And it kind of turned me off to the larger organizations because it's like I had to like send them a letter of how I was raising the money and why I was donating the money, and it was almost like they didn't want the money.
Mm-hmm.
And Carlito brought this up on Abe's show the other day about how he raised all, you know, Liana raised all this money for the Cancer Foundation. They didn't want the money because it was coming from a cigar company. Like, how could you not want to take money that could potentially help towards research to
Save
fight
lives.
to save lives? So that's why you know small organizations like GAR. I love the fact that it's called GAR, GGARR. Is I know that all the people that work for them they're all volunteers. They just love the breed and they love animals and they want to do what's best for these animals that have no voice. So I know when I give them $1,000 here and there, it's going to them to help these dogs. So I appreciate it.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And you know, back in the fall, you know, as my audience knows, and a lot of my close family and friends know, I lost my best friend,
Yeah.
Maya, and wonderful dog that I had for you know, over 15 years, and she was a rescue, and you know, she was actually rescued from a pretty horrific situation. She was found chained to a stop sign by a police officer, with several injuries, and it was a horrific story. And you know, it's you know, it was really great to have her as part of my life for as long as I did. And
Yeah.
it was, you know, you know, a lot of people really, you know, I put up a post a few days after, you know, we had to put her down, and you know, so many people inside the industry, outside the industry, my close friends, family, so many people just reaching out and just expressing, you know, their sympathies, and you know, um and I know all of them were for the heart. But when you actually commented on the post, I knew it was from a person who really understood what I was going through, and it
Yeah. Yeah.
it really just it meant the world to me. So I
Listen,
wanted
man,
to know that.
I appreciate that, but for every time I see someone post on Facebook that they lost their pet, I know what it's like to lose a pet that means a lot to you, and I might not even know these people personally, or maybe never even interacted with them on Facebook before, but somehow they ended up in my feed, and it's for me, it's always, you know, something that I need to at least comment on, you know, to tell them I'm sorry for their loss, because I understand it. It's not an easy thing, trust me. Like I've had some tough ones, and shit, man, I was having a conversation with Austin at Michael's Euless when I thought my dog Kona was literally like literally on his way out, and I went back to Los Angeles. Literally, I was having a conversation with Austin. Pretty much, I was almost in tears, but I went back to Los Angeles, and I did everything I could to make sure that he was comfortable, and we actually got him walking again. He wasn't walking, like he wasn't even able to move. We got him walking again, and we ended up having a few more treatments for some cancer that he had, and I think easily he was around for another 6 months. But it was, you know, we knew when the time was right that okay, it was time to say goodbye. But it's not an easy thing to do, trust me. I feel everybody that's lost a pet and that's going through the potential of having to lose a pet, they kind of get lost a little bit, and they don't know where to go. Listen, man, I've never had kids, like, so like the dogs are my kids. I do have 3 boys in this household that I consider my kids, because I'm the only male figure around them that is around them all the time. Of course, they have their uncle and their grandfather, but like, dude, I couldn't even imagine a parent having to go through situations with a person. And I've seen a lot of tough things with some of my fan base on Facebook going through a lot of tough times with their kids having medical issues, and I couldn't even imagine that. I mean, I know what I have to deal with my dogs, but I don't know how I react if it was a person. I don't know. It's a tough subject.
Yes. I can't thank you enough for bringing you know, Gulfstream Guardian Angels up as a subject tonight. This was I knew you'd bring a great organization, and you really came through on this. Ironically, the first show that I announced this new segment I was going to be doing, I picked the charity. I did pick ASPCA, so it's funny that you had an interesting story on it. But no, it is, you're absolutely right. It is really kind of, there's no other way to say it. It's really sad that when you run into these charities and you really want to make a difference, and it's almost like they don't want to take your money. It's so bizarre. It's really weird. So.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty lucky over the years, where a lot of the charities that we donate to from Saints and Sinners have always been through people we know that were cigar smokers or cigar lovers, so they were more than welcome to take the donations. One of them's the Dear Jack Foundation, which was the lead singer from Jack's Mannequin, Andrew, who went through a battle of leukemia, and he started a foundation called Dear Jack, and we've actually supported his foundation for a few years, because he would always hold a golf tournament in Los Angeles, and we'd always do whatever we could from Saints and Sinners to help him out. That was actually a personal thing for Casper, because Casper used to be Andrew's tour manager. So.
You said that's Dear Jack is the name of the organization?
The Dear Jack Foundation, yeah.
Okay. But write that down.
It's a small world, because Casper was the tour manager for Andrew for years, One of our other friends in the industry, well, he's not in the industry, but he lives in DC, and he used to work on tours and knew Casper from those tours. Adam DeAngelis, he used to work for Jack's Mannequin also on tour, and the easy connection was our accountants. Mine and Casper's accountant were Andrew's accountants, so they were more than happy to have a cigar company donate. It's hard, again, it's hard to find bigger organizations that want to take donations from cigar companies.
Yeah, it's
because tobacco bad, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, tobacco bad. It's so unfortunate. But I think we've got some good people that have donated tonight. Hopefully some more will raise some great awareness for this great organization. And again, can't thank you enough for bringing it to our attention. It's been fantastic. So some other great subjects that I wanted to tackle tonight before we called it a night, Pete. Speaking of good organizations that you've dedicated a lot of time, blood, sweat, tears, and into it is, of course, the PCA.
Yeah,
you've had continued commitment to it.
CRA also,
of course, absolutely. One of the best conversations that I had at the trade show a couple years ago, when the last trade show that we had, was a very brief one with you. Right after it was at the opening gala. And it was right after the PCA had announced PCA, right? They were no longer IPCPR.
And CigarCon.
And CigarCon, right? Exactly. And I asked you very directly. I said, what were your thoughts on it? And without getting too much into the detail of it, you just said, I support the industry. And in a very bold move, I pressed you on a little bit. I'm like, but what do you really think? Kind of, and again, you weren't being flippant. You just said very directly, like, Bear, I support the industry. And we went into this great discussion of your commitment to PCA, CRA, and the industry itself. And so I wanted to take a moment here. Again, here we are 2 years later now, almost 2 years later at this point, and you have not, if anything, you've reinforced that support. And so sounds like such a silly question, considering what you do for a living and your life's work. But why is it so important to you to be committed to this industry in the form of support for these two organizations?
Oh man, that's a loaded question, really, because I think if you're participating in this industry, and I'm not going to put anything on the consumer level, because the consumers support the industry by buying cigars. That's really their support. They shouldn't feel pressured to do much more than that, because in the end, unfortunately, cigar prices are going to end up going up, and the reflect is that the consumers, as long as they're still there helping buying the cigars from the manufacturers, then they're taking their share of the hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
For lack of better words, I guess. But for the manufacturers and the retailers, I think it's super important that we're driving the support as much as possible, because without these two organizations really fighting the battles that we deal with, like the PCA is really great with state and local legislation. The CRA is dealing with the federal stuff and all the lawyers and the legal bills that are coming our way. We need as much support as possible, and it has to be an industry-wide thing. It can't be just, there's literally 14 companies that are pitching in a ton of money into the CRA, and all that money goes to pay the lawyers that are helping us with the federal lawsuits. Like there's no room to like have a party or anything else. There's literally all that money goes specifically to pay legal bills. And in the end, those legal bills end up fighting the fight, where we end up seeing a couple victories, which were really good. We think we're going to see some more victories in the future. I think the PCA, which what they do with the the local and the state stuff, is important to keep on supporting them, just because they're going to need those funds to go after, with their in-house lobbyists, to go after the state and local legislations that are constantly trying to kill our industry in every form. So if you think about it, with the everybody's like, oh, the cigar industry is doing really great right now because sales are up, and cigar smoking's up. Everybody's stuck at home, they're smoking more than they ever smoked. People are selling more cigars than ever. But at the same time that's happening, there's all these people that are so anti-tobacco that are every day pounding us with more tobacco taxes, more age restrictions, more bans on tobacco in different formats, in different states, in different cities. They're nonstop. So we can't stop our fight. And that's why I'm so aggressive when it comes to contributing to these organizations, because I want them to have the funds to fight for the retailer and also what I do for a living. Because without the ability to do business, I have no business. In the end, without the ability to sell cigars, the consumers wouldn't be able to get the cigars that they want. That's why the consumers are doing their job just by purchasing cigars. Every time they purchase a cigar, that helps the industry as a total. I wish that more companies, outside of a couple handfuls that I know, would support a little bit more. That's why I was really pleased to see a small company like Terrazona Cigars. Eddie Terrazona stepped up,
Yeah.
and threw in a $10,000 check for the PCA. I got to give him props, man. He's not a big company.
Yeah.
He's probably on the smaller side of most companies, and he's put in more money than most companies that I know that are selling gangbusters in cigars right now. So I have to give Eddie Terrazona props for stepping up, and I wish there were more smaller companies like him that would push that button a little bit more. So that's me calling out the rest of the industry.
I was gonna say, or even larger ones. Yeah, no, I was really surprised, pleasantly, like you said, when I saw that. I was really, I mean, that was a bold move, and I really got to hand it to him for making a stand like that. And not to.
In the end, real quick,
Sure.
For me, when it comes to the PCA, it's really about survival right now. And to me, the PCA, that organization, is the one I grew up with. The CRA came later. Without the PCA, without a trade show, we lose our Super Bowl. That's the one thing that our industry looks forward to doing every year. And we've been stuck now for, which will be potentially 2 years, where we won't have a trade show. Mm-hmm. It's tough to know that we're not going to be able to get together and all of us come together and support the industry. Right now, I think it's the best time for everybody to get involved and do whatever they can, in the smallest form to the largest form. Do whatever you can to support these two organizations, because the contributions, the donations, they do matter, and they all go to something bigger. And that's the livelihood of this industry.
Not to stir the pot too much here, Pete. I'm really not angling. I promise you. But you're not the first person on my show to really bring up and call out, not necessarily by name, but other people in the industry for their non-support. Alan Rubin was very, very passionate about, the support that he's obviously levied. And he actually even put a number to it. He said if every cigar company, just committed $1,000 a month,
Yeah,
it's
it's a big deal.
it would be a monumental in the shift, because I did some quick math on it.
And it's not a lot for some of these companies.
No, and
Trust me.
yeah, I did some quick math on it. Because at the time we had levied about, I think that the total that they had was 7.6 million that the industry has levied against the fight, against regulation. And I did some quick math on it just based on the, a roundabout number that I had in my head. And I was like, well, if every company that I can think of donated $1,000 a month, that would put us up to $6 million in just one calendar year.
Yeah.
I mean, that would essentially almost double what we've committed to over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, that would be monumental. By putting
That's why you see
yeah.
That's why you see the CRA packs that the CRA is doing, because and I thank the consumers that are actually buying those packs, because it's every time one of those packs is sold, that raises $100 per pack just for the CRA. And when we sell 6,000 packs, that's $600,000 that goes into the legal fund to pay the lawyers that are battling the lawsuits for us. So I have to thank every consumer that spends, I think it's $150. And then I know there's some retailers that actually kick in their portion of the profit to the CRA, which is even better. We donate all the cigars for those packs. We don't make a dime off of them. So not only are we donating money throughout the year, then we're donating cigars to raise even more money for the CRA. I want to see more people do it. I know there's solid companies out there that aren't donating a dime. And this is my way of not naming names, but saying, hey, step up. The industry needs it. You're making a lot of money off of the industry, and you're making money off of these consumers, and you can't put the blame on the consumer, because the consumer is paying you dearly every time they buy one of your cigars. So step up and donate to one of these organizations. And I'll go back to Eddie to Arizona. He stepped up, and I'm very thrilled to see a small company like Eddie to Arizona pitching in that big amount of money, because that's not a small amount of money for any company. But I would put Eddie towards the smaller of most companies, and he stepped up bigger than some of the companies that you would consider mid-level companies.
Oh, I mean, not to be insulting to Eddie, but I mean, I would wager that, a large percentage of people that read that article on PCA had never even heard of him.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
He was.
Eddie's been around
committed
for a while.
He has.
Eddie's been around for a fairly long while. And I'll even say, hey, retailers and consumers, support the people that are supporting your industry that you love so much. How about that?
Yeah. It's not too big of an ask.
Alan and I have good conversations, by the way. I love Alan Rubin. He's one of my favorite people in the industry, and we've had a lot of great conversations over the last 18 years that I've had my brand. So he's always very, very open with his opinion, and we have a lot of not often, but we have a lot of good talks about how can we make it better. So,
well, and like you, he's very committed to it, very committed, and he backs it up too, which is the great thing about it. Brandon in the chat mentioned something, and I'll even add to it. He said that the thing that he worries about the most is the future. He worries about the future generations of cigar companies that may never come to fruition because of people's lack of support now. And I'll even throw one else in the hat with that. I totally echo that sentiment, but there are brands that we love today, that could be drastically affected, if not annihilated, if the anti-tobacco lobby had its way. And
Absolutely.
Tatuaje is very lucky in a couple of senses, at least as it stands now, because of some of the the predicate stuff that you hold. But that doesn't necessarily that doesn't give you a pass, and you certainly you certainly don't take it either, which is
well, I mean, like, think about it. Like, awesome. Think about this real quick, Bear. Think about all the companies that have predicate products, like a lot of solid companies. I'll name a few: Fuente, Padron, my father, Alec Bradley, J.C. Newman, La Flor Dominicana, Lito Gomez. Like solid. Rocky Patel. They have tons of predicate brands, and these are the companies, myself included. These are the companies that are paying to fight the fights, and we don't really need it as much as the other companies.
Took the words out of my mouth.
So
100%.
I always like, I'll throw in the guilt factor. Why ride on the coattails of these other manufacturers that don't need to do what they're doing by just saying, oh, they'll do it for us, it's a free pass for them? No, it's not, dude. You got to do your part too. Get up off your throne and all that, those piles of cash that you're making, and kick a little bit back to the industry to help support it. It's few and far between right now.
Yeah. I'm hoping, again, this is my naivete creeping in, but I'm hoping that the year that 2020 created for a lot of companies, where profits actually were increased, mainly because expenses drastically decreased.
Like my travel expenses decreased a lot.
Hopefully, again, my naivete creeping in there, I might, I'm hoping that this kind of says to some of these supporters or non-supporters rather, who have a little bit more extra laying around, they're like, oh, I can part with a few bucks here. Great, do it. Let's do it. Let's just let's. I'm pleased. I was really excited. 2020 was the year that I became a lifetime member of CRA. I had committed I'd done my $30 annual renewal for almost a decade, and I had my eye on that lifetime membership for a long time, and I finally had the ability to do it this past year, and it was. I know it's such a drop in the bucket, but man, it felt good. It was just awesome, and that's not going to stop. I'm going to continue to contribute.
You know what, man? Like, I'll tell you. So, like the Saints and Sinners group, when we started doing the automatic, automatic membership to the CRA thing, we got a lot of pushback in the beginning, but it was a way for them to understand that they're going to help out supporting the industry by doing this. But I made sure what they got with the pack was worth the value that we were going to kick back, or what they had to spend extra on the kit every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the last 2 years, the Saints and Sinners group has sent the CRA over $60,000.
Oh, wow.
Just from the members paying that extra little bump, but then in turn we gave them something for that, something custom and special in the pack that was made specifically as the extra piece that they would get for being a CRA member, and them knowing that they got a physical thing, they got an item for the contribution. But in 2 years we sent $60,000 to the CRA. So I mean, that's a lot of money. And I want to thank the S&S guys for understanding why we do it. We had a couple people say that they'll never support the CRA because they didn't understand what the CRA was. They thought the CRA was a slush fund for the executive director, and they thought that the CRA was just an organization that was helping out big tobacco. And I'm like, no, you have no idea that the organization is helping out all the the mom and pop, family operations that are out there. So, I mean, I think the misunderstanding of what the CRA is, that kind of turned some people off, but they have to understand that it's actually a good organization.
No, it really is, and yeah, your commitment to it is certainly certainly proven its weight, and that's an awesome amount of money that your group has been able to to raise, and
that's aside from what Tatuaje does separately, by the way.
Of course, yeah.
I'll give you one step further with Eddie Tarazona. I sent him a private message on Facebook, and he said, I said, thank you, man. Thanks for stepping up. That's really important for the industry. And I have to give you a huge amount of props for doing what you do. And every time someone would comment on one of his posts, I would make sure I would jump on the post also and say, thank you again. But we got into a conversation about it, and we started talking about the CRA, and he goes, I want to find out more about the CRA portion and to see what I can do for the CRA also. So here's this small company that is doing what's right, is stepping up and sending in checks when the industry needs it. And it's not going to, just because, like, the CRA is a board of directors that's filled up with manufacturers and a retailer. None of us get money from it. We do this because we're trying to support the industry, and we're trying to fund the battles. The same thing with the PCA. If you're a retailer, put your name in the hat, be a board member of the PCA, get your voice heard. It's important that you jump into the ring and be active. I know Josh from the Vault in Meridian, Ohio. He's jumping in to be a big supporter of the PCA. Jay Davis is a huge supporter of the CRA and the PCA. Mm-hmm. It's, Michael, who runs two big cigar stores in Texas, doesn't have a lot of spare time, but he's still a supporter of the industry. He puts his time out there to help, to get his voice heard on the boards of these organizations, to make sure that the money's being spent the right way. Again, the money goes towards fighting the fights and the battles that we have constantly coming up every day of the week. Even when the industry is booming, doesn't mean the anti-tobacco people are going to, sit to the side and wait for some other day. No, they're constantly putting pressure on us. We got to keep the train going, and to move that train, you need a lot of fuel. And to get that fuel, you need companies that aren't contributing to contribute. Plain and simple. I'll step off my soapbox.
It's a good one to be on, Pete. So, last two questions for the evening, Pete. And this first one, we're going to go back to having a little fun. And speaking of owning it, I got to own it here again. I've jinxed you 2 years in a row on something.
Yeah.
And
oh no, and you can't say.
I know I don't have that kind of power, but so the subject, of course, is the illustrious. We mentioned the publication earlier in tonight's interview, but the illustrious top 25 cigar list from Cigar Aficionado, a list that your cigars have been a staple on for the last decade plus.
Every year but 1 year. Yeah. Every year but 1 year we made the list.
And for the last 2 years, I've said that I thought Cuban was going to win, but I thought, if the Cuban's not going to win, that it was going to be a Tatuaje cigar, and you were gonna finally get the illustrious number one that I still believe to my bones you very, very, very richly deserve. And I thought we had it this year, and I say we.
I thought we had it this year too.
With the La Mission getting an amazing rating earlier in the year, and I thought that was going to be the ticket. And once again, fell a little short. Two good cigars, definitely got it both years. So I'm not trying to disparage the winners by any stretch of the imagination. Two very deserving Very deserving cigar manufacturers making some great cigars, just like you. But an interesting byproduct discussion of the top 25 has kind of spawned the last 2 years between you and I. And I have to give credit where credit's due. And you and I were talking about this. This started last year, and you're like, no, we're not going to get it, Bear. And you said, you kind of said where you thought your cigar might place, and then you started naming basically verbatim which cigar was going to place each single year. And it was absolutely true last year, and then you did it again this year.
Yeah, but it's all a magic show. Someone, I'll be honest with you. I think I've told you this before. That as much as I don't want to know it, there's always someone that has the information leaked. And as much as I don't want to know it, they automatically send me like the information. I'm like, oh man, like especially this year, like when I was really hoping, I was really hoping he was wrong. Like maybe they fed him the wrong information. And no, he was dead on. So I can't take credit for the knowledge. It's literally someone finds out the information and they send it to me, and I like, yeah, it's not an easy thing to see when you're not going to get it.
Mm.
But it's weird. I've had a weird history with Cigar Aficionado because like I don't go and scour the internet and like how can I manipulate a website and see if I can figure out the top 25 myself. I'm not a hacker. But one year, Cigar Aficionado had sent out a link. Hey, the top 25 is coming. So I clicked on the link. I swear to God, I clicked on the link and the whole list was published. And some guys and it was immediately taken down, but I saw the list. Like I saw the list. And immediately was taken down. And there was a group of guys on the Cigar Family website, Fuentes forum, having a conversation about what the top 25 would be. And I got on there and I basically gave the list. And I decided to like mix up one of them. And the guys from CA actually called me out, and they actually thought that I might have hacked the website. I'm like, no, you sent me the link. Like I that's not what I do. Like you sent me the link, and I think they held me accountable ever since. That's why I'll never get a number one. There was another year, Bear, though. There was another year though where their website was so like not protected.
Yes.
That you could just change the URL.
Right.
So instead of it saying number 3, you could just put number 2 and number 1, and you would see what it was. So I sent Barry Blonder, who used to work for Alan Rubin and Alec Bradley. He was a sales rep. I said, hey, congrats on the number 1. He goes, what are you talking about? I go, Fransado's getting number 1. He goes, no, what are you talking about? How do you know that? The list isn't even out yet. I go, dude, try this, because everybody sent me an email and said, hey, dude, if you want to see what the list is, just change the URL. They've since have fixed that flaw, but
right.
I think I'm still held accountable from Cigar Aficionado. That's why I'm convinced I'll never get number 1, because
I hope you're wrong there.
I keep on hacking the website.
Yeah, I was gonna say it didn't take any level of sophistication. They did the year that the Eye of the Shark won a couple years ago. The same blunder occurred, and we all, anyone with a couple of brain cells figured it out, and we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I hope you're wrong on that, Pete, because I mean, a lot of deserving folks in this industry deserve that number 1 spot, and you are chief among them, for sure.
I'll tell you, one of my best friends in the industry, John Huber, who I'm sure he's been on your show a few times. Has he, right?
I have not. I have had the privilege of interviewing a couple of Crown Heads associates, including Miguel Shodell, his national sales manager, and Luciano Mireles, who he partners with in distribution.
Oh yeah.
But I have not had unfortunately, I have not had the opportunity to interview John, and I'm looking forward to it at some point.
John's good people, man. But he texts me every year. He's like, this is your year. And I'm like, I don't think so, dude. Like every
So
year though,
it's mine and John's fault. Okay, cool. I can share the blame with somebody.
every year, actually, even Alec and Bradley both texted me and said, "You're gonna get it this year." I go, "Nope, I'm not." And I actually told them Ernie was gonna get it. I actually told everybody Ernie was gonna get it, and they're like, "What?" And these guys work with Ernie. You know, John works with Ernie. Uh, Alec and Bradley work with Ernie, and they're like, "No way, dude! It's impossible. His cigar got like a 91-point rating. There's no way it's going to happen." I go, "Well,
just watch."
I think
yeah, Alec was tickled pink. I predicted the gatekeeper would place up really high on the list, and he was like, "Oh man, your lips to Shanken's ear on that." And I was like, "Man, I think it's going to happen." And
I was happy for them. They're good kids, man.
Yeah, they really are. They've done some incredible work. I've been pleased to get to know them. It's been awesome. So this is the last question of the night, Pete, and I can't thank you. And I always take this time to thank my guests. I know it's not easy staying up late to have a conversation with me, and especially on Sundays when it's typically family time, and even in the period of COVID, it's still family time, and for you to take time.
Well, my wife's in bed with the dog already, so I'm going to be struggling for space when I get up there.
Well, I appreciate it nonetheless. It means the absolute world to me. So, so this question's my last question. This is the curveball segment. This is meant to also be a little fun and everything, but I thought it would be interesting. We've mentioned a couple of relationships tonight, and I certainly don't want to be so I don't know, so immature as to ask favorites or anything like that. But I thought this would be an interesting take. One of my favorite things to come out of COVID has been a lot of these companies to get on Zooms and virtual herfs and just really engage with consumer bases and get to know people in different lights. And very early on in COVID, one of my favorite pieces, which of course unfortunately was kind of lost to the interwebs. He was able to retrieve all of them except for this one, but Michael Herklotz sat down with you for one of the Instagram lives that he was doing with people inside the industry and outside. Really, really great, interesting stuff. But I was privileged enough to catch your interview live, which was the only way you could get it, because now it's kind of like lost, as I was mentioning, which was really sad for anyone who missed it, because it was a great conversation, hilarious at times. You guys were really busting each other's balls. It was hilarious, but you guys had some terrific insights, and I thought this question would be interesting. So outside of folks that are associated with the Tatuaje family, obviously pretty extensive family, and then obviously the My Father family, which is you're obviously related to and very close to in certain regards. But outside those two organizations, My Father and the Tatuaje Cigars family, who do you think that you have the closest relationship in the cigar industry? Not who do you have the closest relationship that's outside of your family, so to speak?
Wow, man, that's tough. You talking about manufacturers only?
Take the question however you want. There's no right or wrong answer here. Just your interpretation.
I have a lot of great relationships with retailers,
which I thought this was interesting.
Like I've become really close with everybody eventually gets my cell phone number. They end up texting me, and I think I've built a fun relationship with Jay Jay Davis, really quickly over the last year. Jay's become a huge supporter of the product, but I really love the fact that he's supporting the industry as much as he can. I have a lot of great conversations with Phil from Updown. Phil, obviously, same thing, supports the industry a lot, works with the PCA, is on the board. So he's really on top of what's going on and what's going to be happening. I mean, there's so many retailers that I could list off. Manufacturers, it's tough, man. I've had a relationship with Dion since 2006. I mean, we still text each other and talk here and there. Same with Huber. We text more than anything. And then Herklotz, I've had a lot of great conversations with him, just based off of, you know, his exit out of the whole Nat Sherman world. And then, you know, for him to confide in me on some of the information of his new launch was really cool. I have a lot of guys like that in the industry that I love being around. I love talking with them. I love having conversations with them. So I wouldn't put anyone on a pedestal. I'd probably put them all as a, you know, it's the same thing, man, with when I get into a boardroom with the CRA group, for me, I'm like the kid in the room, with all these giants, but they're all either longtime friends or mentors. And, you know, I think I have a great relationship with all of those guys too. And that includes Alan, that includes Rocky and Robbie Levin from Ashton. And I mean, I obviously have a very close relationship with the Levin family because of their relationship with the Garcias. And then you go to the tobacco side, I really have good conversations with Gustavo Cura from Oliva. I mean, it's all over the map. I wouldn't put anybody on a pedestal. I have a lot of great friends and not one best friend. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I can't put anybody on a pedestal. They're all good.
I figured it'd be a tough question, but I thought it was a fun one. Just like I wasn't saying, like, let's not play favorites here, but it's just like who you might be closest to. So I thought it was an interesting exercise. But like you said, you've
if you
been
have to
around
go
long
back
enough.
in time,
Mm-hmm.
if you have to go back in time, I was super close with Carlito at one time. Super, like, ridiculously close with Inez and Lito from La Flor Dominicana, to the point where I would talk to Inez probably every week, every couple days, even, just talking about production that they're having in the Dominican Republic. And I was down in the factory a couple times with Lito. You know, all these guys, we don't get to see each other that often.
Right.
But when we see each other, it's like old home week, you know? It's like nothing's changed. It's just like, okay, what do we got to do to make the industry better, type of thing. And it's like Ernie, when I've sat in the factory in Nicaragua with Ernesto Carrillo. He happened to be visiting Pepin and Jaime at the factory, and we've had great conversations with him at the factory. And, you know, Pepin, same thing. He's always, like, he went to the Dominican Republic and ended up going to Ernie's factory and, you know, started, like, you know, teaching his rollers how to do certain things. Like, you know, like, the industry is full of great people that really care about each other, and they actually are willing to give, you know, you useful information to help you move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe maybe I'm in this little clique or bubble with these certain people, but like, when I'm with Rocky, I have great conversations with Rocky. When if I'm with you know, Lito, I'll have a great conversation with him. It's all over the map. There's no best friend. There's a lot of great friends.
No, you mentioned Carlito, and I remember that there's this picture floating around the internet too. A very young Pete Johnson with a couple of other folks sitting on,
Yeah,
like a kitchen table almost. And there's a young Carlito Fuente there too. And
yeah, Carlito, Carlos Sr. and Robbie Levin, and actually Wayne Suarez was there too. Yeah, that was 1996 in the Dominican Republic. So,
oh wow.
yeah, I've been around the block a little bit. 28 years in the industry, and I mean, I still have a high regard for all the old guys in the industry. I mean, I love them. Like Manolo Casada, you know, when I'm around him, it feels like, you know, he's just that guy, you know. Carlos Sr. was one of those few guys that I would get nervous around.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was Carlos Sr., you I mean, he was just one of those dudes, Yeah, I mean, there's Carlito and then there's Carlos Sr. And Carlos Sr. was like the old man Padron in a sense. Like I had more conversations with George and maybe even the cousin Rudy, and Orlando here and there, but Jose Orlando was like that one guy that the translation barrier, obviously the language barriers were tough, but when you're around a guy like that, you just sit there and listen.
Absolutely.
A lot of good people. That's why this industry is the best industry in the world. A lot of good people.
Hands
down. A couple
down.
assholes, but a lot of good people.
But final thought I'll leave you. You mentioned Manolo Casada, and I know that you played a big part in the documentary Hand Rolled, and not necessarily too much on the creative side, but one of the things that you do that you did take credit for, and Jesse and Steve do give you credit for sure, among a lot of things, and along with your tireless support that you gave to their project. But the opening to that documentary with Manolo Casada, just I could watch it on the loop, man. It's just
well,
perfect.
His voice. I mean, we joked. We said if I can't get Peter Weller to narrate the film, I think maybe we should have Manolo do it because his voice is so good.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a perfect way to open that documentary. And I think I shocked Jesse when I had him on the show. I had him and Steve on the show, and he's like, well, how many times have you seen it? And I said, and at the time it was like, oh, I've seen it a few times. He's like, oh, I was like, yeah, I think my last count was 14. And he was like, you serious? I was like, yeah. And it had only been on streaming network. It had only been on Amazon Prime for, I don't know, a couple of months at that point. And I never saw a viewing of it. But when they announced the date, I mean, I waited up till midnight to purchase it. I mean, it was like, I felt like a kid again back in high school, waiting for like the concert ticket or something like that. I mean, I was so excited, and I watched it that night, and I've watched it countless times since. I think I'm close to 30 at this point. I've just watched it so much. It's fabulous work. It's something the three of you should be very proud of, and I know you are.
Yeah, very, very. I mean, that was actually, I'll be honest, that was the one year, that 1 year where I actually contributed a lot of money to make the film. That was the 1 year that I kind of didn't do as much for the CRA or the PCA because I was focused on making this film that I thought would be a great commercial for the industry. So,
well, I think one could argue that you supported it even more than any other year by doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so, probably, right?
Well, Pete, again, can't thank you enough for tonight. What an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to sit down with you again. I
had a blast, man.
Thank you, sir. To my audience, can't thank you guys enough for staying up late with us as well and enjoying every moment. Please, there will be in the show notes, but please consider donating to the amazing cause that the Pete and I talked about earlier. Garden Angels, GAR, fantastic organization supporting a man's best friend. Can't get any better than that. And wonderful organization, and just a wonderful time talking with you, Pete. Thank you for all the likes, shares, comments, everyone. If you are a fan of the show, please continue to support us. You can always check us out on YouTube, our ELOSOFUMAR channel. Be sure you subscribe there. Always our shows broadcast live on Facebook every week. You can like the ELOSOFUMAR page, and if you want to check out a calendar of upcoming guests, including Amanda McAuliffe of McAuliffe Cigars, who'll be my guest next week. Really excited about the opportunity to speak with her, and got some other great guests in the works. So definitely stay tuned for all that. You can always listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review. And if you already are a subscriber, please unsubscribe, but don't forget to resubscribe, because that really helps my numbers, so I can get great people like Pete to come back and talk to me every so often. So thank you, everyone.
In closing, real quick,
Yes.
to everybody that's watching, and anybody that's watching can pass it on to a friend. There is a new CRA pack coming up it's actually going to be starting to, I think the Fuente group is actually going to pack the packs in April. So it's available sometime in May. It's going to be another great selection of great cigars that if you want to support the CRA, that's a great way by purchasing one of those packs. So thanks for that.
Absolutely. So in the next 60 days, take a look. New pack from the CRA. If you want to get involved with the industry, smoke some cigars, smoke and support the great industry and the great organizations like PCA and CRA that do all the hard work for us and continue to support the manufacturers that support this industry as well. We thank you all for tuning in. This was our 159th take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studios of Euless, Texas. He's Pete Johnson. I'm Bear Duplessis. Guess what, everyone? We'll see you next time.
See you guys. Thank you.